Chapter 79. Jishui didn't expect the situation to be so serious, and suddenly felt a little flustered. He always felt that what he did was right, and those crazy clansmen were all wrong. But after listening to Hyojin's words, he faintly realized that his behavior of confessing to the village's top leaders had inadvertently pushed Uchiha into the abyss. Bowing deeply to Hyojin, Jishui said sincerely, "Senpai, I will never use Kotoeme Tsukumi on my companions. Please believe me on this point." Hyojin shook his head. This has nothing to do with believing or not. Facing a person who can change their will at any time, no matter who it is, they will feel instinctive fear and scruples. Even I am no exception. Jishui was a little lost. But whether you are loyal to Mai or not, whether you are upright or kind, as long as you have the ability to control the will of others, you will be a threat in the eyes of others. After a slight pause, Hyojin sighed. In the end, this forbidden technique of Kotoeme Tsukumi is really too uncomfortable. By now, Jishui has realized what the key point of the matter is, so he hurriedly asked, "Senpai, then is there any way to remedy it?" Hyojin held his chin with one hand and pondered for a while, then said, "I don't have any good ideas for the time being, but you'd better not do anything unnecessary. At present, the peace talks between the village and Cloud Village have not been completed, so we won't do anything to Uchiha for the time being. As for the future, let's talk about it in the future." Jishui's problem lies with Kotoeme Tsukumi. As long as his Manjikyu Sharingan is still in his eye socket, it will be impossible for him to be completely accepted by the village's top leaders. Jishui nodded silently. Thinking of the obsidian who has been stirring up trouble outside the village, Hyojin said, "By the way, pay more attention to whether there are any suspicious people near your clan's land." "You mean?" "During the Nine-Tails Rebellion a year ago, although I was not in the village, the information I collected showed that the Nine-Tails were indeed controlled by Sharingan." Jishui's expression turned ugly. "Senior, are you suspecting that the Nine-Tails Rebellion was planned by our Uchiha? The facts are in front of us. It's inevitable that Uchiha will be suspected." Glancing at Jishui, Hyojin continued, "And even if Uchiha did it, it might not necessarily be the Uchiha from the village." Jishui suddenly thought of something and fell in a deep thought. In the history of Uchiha in recent decades, there were many people who left the village or disappeared for no reason. The most famous one was Madara, who established my village with the first generation, Uchiha. Therefore, it is possible that there are Uchiha descendants outside my village. After the two chatted for a while, Jishui said goodbye and left. Looking at Jishui's departing figure, Hyojin shook his head. As the most talented ninja of Uchiha's generation, Jishui is almost impeccable in other aspects, but he is still too naive when it comes to figuring out the human heart. In Hyojin's previous life, Jishui is almost invincible in one-on-one combat, and the reason why he died so easily is because of his personality. Naruto Building, a small conference room. 3 generations were discussing the peace talks between the village and Kumo Village with the 3 elders of the advisory group. When the secret mission of Umbu Team 11 was mentioned, 3 generations clapped their hands. Kakashi, who was waiting for the inquiry outside the conference room, walked in and told the 3 elders of the advisory group what he knew about how Team 11 completed the mission. When Kakashi finished, 3 generations said lightly, "You can leave now." Kakashi nodded and left the conference room. Zhuan Xiaochun said, "It turns out that Team 11 harassed Kumo Village's transport line in the rear, forcing Kumo Village to slow down their offensive. This time Team 11 has made a great contribution to the village." Mito Hamura on the side also echoed, "Well, we can consider promoting and rewarding Class 11. At this time, Danzo suddenly said, "The news I received from the route is not like this." Not only the 2 advisors, but 3 generations also looked at Danzo, waiting for his next words. Danzo said coldly, "Kumo Village suddenly slowed down their offensive because they suffered heavy losses in the rear. It is said that more than 300 Kumo ninjas, including several elite Jonin ninjas, died in one night. Even 4 generations Liang was forced to leave Kumo Village because of this. This The two consultants Koharu and Mito Hamura looked at each other. When 3 generations heard this, they immediately remembered Jishui, who took the initiative to confess to them yesterday that he awakened Manjikyu Sharingan. Their faces suddenly sank, and they didn't say anything for a long time. Danzo got up and asked, "Why didn't Team 11 report this? Why did they hide such a feat?" Zhuan Xiaochun asked 3 generations seriously, "Does Team 11 really have such combat power?" The 4 members of Team 11 were able to annihilate more than 300 Kumo ninjas in one night, which means that at least one of the 4 members of Team 11 has the strength of a Kage. 3 generations had to say helplessly, "Uchiha Jishui awakened the legendary Manjikyu Sharingan." Zhuan Xiaochun was taken aback and immediately frowned. "That's the legendary cursed power. Someone in the Uchiha clan has awakened it." Hamura whispered to himself, "It won't be another Uchiha Madara, right?" Danzo didn't stop and continued to say, "Heizen, you seem to have said less." 3 generations stared at Danzo with sharp eyes. Danzo, who was being stared at by 3 generations, was not afraid at all and said, "Uchiha Jishui's Manjikyu Sharingan can perform a forbidden technique called Kodoame Tsukumi, which can instantly change the will of the user and turn them into a puppet." "What?" Koharu and Mito Hamura turned pale with fright. Glancing at the shocked faces of the two, Danzo smiled coldly and said, "I propose that we immediately take coercive measures against Uchiha Jishui." After a short period of shock, Zhuan Xiaochun and Hamura also echoed, "I agree." 3 generations shook their heads firmly. Jishui is the bridge of communication between us and Uchiha. If we take coercive measures against him, it will stimulate the Uchiha clan. Now, the peace talks between the village and Kumo are at a critical moment. If there is a riot in the village, the consequences will be unimaginable. Danzo seems to have expected 3 generations to say this, so he took a step back and said, "Then put Uchiha Jishui on the watch list, and let Root be responsible for monitoring him." After a moment of silence, 3 generations finally nodded. Chapter 80. Without waiting for 3 generations to speak, Hamura pushed his glasses and said, "Kakashi is a disciple of Minato. There is no need to doubt his loyalty. As the son of my White Fang, the disciple of 4 generations Naruto, and the hero of my in the 3rd Shinobi World War, Kakashi has too many honors. If even he has to be questioned, then no ninja in the village will not be questioned." Sandaime-sama nodded. "I will conduct the relevant questioning of Team 11 in private. There is no need to monitor all of them. They are trustworthy Konoha ninjas." "Trustworthy?" Danzo smiled coldly and said, "Hyojin is an old subordinate of Orochimaru. Who can be sure that he is not a spy of Orochimaru in the village? Letting such a person stay in the Umbu, Heizen, you are too careless." 3 generations was a bit disgusted with Danzo mentioning the past again. "Danzo, there is no need to mention the past." Danzo insisted. "He is a person on the purge list. Such a person must not be allowed to stay in the Umbu. If you insist on going your own way, then I can only arrange for Jin to secretly monitor him." 3 generations were silent. The fact that Kuroto has been on the purge list is like a thorn in Sandaime-sama's heart, making him unable to fully trust Kuroto, because no matter who it is that has been on the purge list and has been abandoned by the village, their loyalty will inevitably be greatly reduced. Seeing 3 generations acquiesce, Danzo did not say anything more. Collecting Oxum? Hissing Ren after saying goodbye to Jishui, Hyojin went to the Death Forest alone. Not long after Ouyang-ming entered the Forest of Death, the small wild boar that tested the poison for him came out from the dense bushes and ran toward him. It spun around and sniffed his trousers. How did it grow so big? Looking at the little wild boar, Hyojin was a little confused. It had only been a little more than a month, and the little wild boar that used to be a cub had now grown several times bigger. Its size was almost taller than Hyojin's waist. After taking a closer look, Hyojin realized that the little wild boar's skin was not intact at all. It was covered in wounds, and its fur was sparse. It seemed like it often fought with the other wild beasts in the forest of death. Injured to this extent, but still ignorant, as if nothing happened, really worthy of being a pig. After sighing with emotion, Hyojin activated the white eye. He carefully looked around and made sure there was no one hiding around and there was no unusual reaction from chakra. Then he slowly closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, the pupils in his eye sockets had turned into a magnificent sapphire blue. Then he slowly printed and shouted, Tenseigan chakra mode. Wow. The sky blue chakra instantly wrapped his body, lifting his whole body and hanging it in the air. The little wild boar on the side didn't panic too much. It carefully leaned forward and sniffed with its nose. It found that the smell didn't change, so it pouted its buttocks and circled around Hyojin. It seemed to be waiting for him to feed it. Hyojin smiled slightly and didn't care about the little wild boar. He concentrated on feeling the Tenseigan chakra mode. Although he had entered the Tenseigan chakra mode in the Country of Thunder before, and even activated the Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion, transformed by the Truth-Seeking Ball. It was on the battlefield after all, and the duration was very short, so Hyojin was not familiar with the Tenseigan chakra mode at all. He was not even familiar with the consumption of the Tenseigan chakra mode. Now that he is hiding in the Death Forest, Kuroto will be able to experience the Tenseigan chakra mode without any interference, and he will also be able to test the various abilities and consumption of the Tenseigan chakra mode. Slowly falling to the ground, Hyojin in the Tenseigan chakra mode pointed to the ground with one hand and poured the Tenseigan chakra mode into the ground. Soon, with him as the center, all the chakra reactions within a radius of nearly 10 miles were fed back to his mind through his Tenseigan chakra. The chakra perception area has increased by nearly 10 times. Secretly overjoyed, Suijin poured chakra into the Tenseigan again and looked around with rapt attention. With the support of sufficient chakra, his Tenseigan immediately bloomed with unparalleled magnificent light. At first glance, it looked like two bright gems. At this time, in his field of vision, everything is clearly visible. Even the patterns on the wings of moths tens of meters away are as close as they are in front of him. Turning his head and glancing at the little wild boar hanging around him, Hyojin suddenly found that the chakra in its body has grown a lot during this time, but several meridians are still a little stagnant and have not been completely connected. Hyojin raised the corner of his mouth and waved at the little wild boar. In an instant, the little wild boar involuntarily flew towards Hyojin. No matter how it struggled, there was no way to get rid of the traction of rain wheel pull. After calling the little wild boar to his hand, Hyojin reached out and gently pressed on its abdomen and instilled the Tenseigan chakra a little bit. With the entry of the Tenseigan chakra, the chakra in the little wild boar's body instantly grew several times, and the previously stagnant meridians were also connected under this powerful chakra. You helped me test the poison for so long. Just now it's your hard work. Hyojin, who was in a good mood, smiled faintly. The little wild boar, who has connected all the meridians in its body, groaned and staggered as if it was drunk. Ignoring the little wild boar, Hyojin concentrated on activating the Truth-Seeking Ball. Unlike the last time, when he could summon 9 Truth-Seeking Balls, this time without the support of the giant Tenseigan, Hyojin used a lot of strength to summon 1 Truth-Seeking Ball. Moreover, he can even faintly feel that once he activates this Truth-Seeking Ball, his own chakra will be consumed rapidly. While playing with the Truth-Seeking Ball in his hand, Hyojin thought to himself, if I only maintain the Tenseigan chakra mode, my own chakra can last for about 10 minutes, but if I use the Truth-Seeking Ball to activate the Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion and the Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion, my chakra may be consumed in an instant. Hyojin has long been indifferent to his own lack of aptitude. From the time of the ninja school to the time of the Third Shinobi War, he has always been invisible in the eyes of others. But so what? He still reached this step. In today's shinobi world, how many people can play with truth-seeking balls like this? He had already flung many people who had been in front of him far behind him. Chapter 81. Collecting his thoughts, Hyojin looked at the truth-seeking ball in his hand. The essence of the truth-seeking ball should be a highly condensed sphere of chakra, and its nature includes yang, yin, and other 5 elements of chakra. In theory, the truth-seeking ball has the ability to change all matter. Therefore, its essence surpasses the ninjutsu of a single chakra attribute, the Kekkei limit of 2 chakra attributes, and the Kekkei elimination of 3 chakra attributes. This is a qualitative difference, and except for a few cases, the truth-seeking ball is almost unsolvable. Because of this, after mastering the Tenseigan chakra mode, an idea flashed in Hyojin's mind. If he can't successfully master the Uzumaki Fuinjutsu in the end, then he can use the truth-seeking ball in the Tenseigan chakra mode to forcibly break the seal imposed by the 4 generations on the dragon vein. But after trying it today, he dispelled this idea. First of all, in the shinobi world, Fuinjutsu is too strange and unpredictable. Almost anything that is known can be sealed, whether it is a variety of powerful tailed beasts and demons, or the products between life and death after the Edo reincarnation, or illusory things such as souls. All are no exception. Even the ancestor of chakra, Otsutsuki Kagaya, is not immune to the Fuinjutsu. Therefore, Hyojin can't say for sure whether his truth-seeking ball can break the seal imposed by the 4 generations on the dragon vein. Secondly, based on the consumption of truth-seeking ball, even if Hyojin's truth-seeking ball can really break the seal imposed by the 4 generations on the dragon vein, he will inevitably exhaust all the chakra in his body. And once the 4 generations Fuinjutsu fails, the huge amount of chakra in the dragon vein will gush out. At that time, even if Suijin mastered all the sealing techniques on the scroll of the artificial tailed beast, without chakra, he would only be able to do nothing but watch from the sidelines. In that state, it was impossible to subdue the huge amount of dragon vein chakra that had escaped. But if he can't steal the chakra of the dragon vein in a very short time, then the reaction of the chakra of the dragon vein without the seal will definitely attract the attention of the surrounding villages, especially the nearby Sand Crypsis. At that time, Hyojin would not be able to eat the fish and would instead be covered in fish. While Hyojin was secretly thinking, he suddenly sensed a chakra approaching rapidly, so he immediately exited the Tenseigan chakra mode. Not long after, an Umbu ninja landed in front of Hyojin and said, "Naruto, Sama summons you." Hyojin nodded and followed the Umbu out of the Death Forest, all the way to the Naruto building. After entering Naruto's office, Kuroto discovered that 3 generations had not only summoned him, but also the other 3 members of Team 11 were also in Naruto's office at this moment. Seeing that everyone had arrived, 3 generations put down his pipe and swept a sharp gaze over the 4 members of Team 11 and asked, "About the secret mission report, did your Team 11 conceal anything?" Kakashi's expression became solemn. Kuroto thought that 3 generations was referring to his awakening of the Manjikyu Sharingan, so he felt a little guilty. Regarding this matter, Team 11 has actually reached a consensus, and that is to keep it a secret for the time being. Because no one knows what the Uchiha clan will do if they learn that an outsider has awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan. So everyone in Team 11, including Jishuei, who is a member of the Uchiha clan, is willing to conceal the matter of Kakashi's awakening of the Manjikyu Sharingan, lest the Uchiha clan do something extreme after receiving the news and intensify the conflict between Uchiha and the village. Guy directly lowered his head, not daring to look directly into the eyes of 3 generations. He also thought that 3 generations was referring to Kakashi's awakening of the Manjikyu Sharingan. Hyojin and Jishuei were relatively calm, because both of them knew that 3 generations was most likely referring to the incident where Hyojin wiped out the entire valley and slaughtered hundreds of Cloud Ninjas. Seeing the 4 members of Team 11 remain silent, Sandaime-sama directly threw the information he obtained from Shimura Danzo in front of them and said in a serious tone, "See for yourself." After reading the information, both Kakashi and Guy were taken aback and immediately looked at Hyojin and Jishuei in surprise. Because during the Battle of the Valley, It was Hyojin and Jishui who brought up the rear, and later Hyojin and Jishui didn't even mention the details of the battle to them. So when they saw the information mentioned, such as the entire valley was razed to the ground, hundreds of ninjas died without a trace, and so on, it can be imagined how shocked the two of them were. Hyojin looked through the information and muttered to himself, "Sure enough, this is what happened." Jishui suddenly stood up and said, "Naruto-sama, this matter was done by me, but in order to conceal the existence of the Manjikyu Sharingan, I didn't mention it in the mission report." 3 generations didn't speak, but looked at Kakashi as the captain of Team 11. Jishui quickly explained. At that time, Captain Kakashi was unconscious, so Captain didn't know about it. 3 generations nodded, picked up his pipe, and took a puff. In the view of 3 generations, if there is anyone in Team 11 who has the strength to slaughter hundreds of Cloud Ninjas in one night, then it can only be Jishui who has awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan. As for Kakashi, Hyojin, and Guy, 3 generations recognize the 3 of them as excellent ninjas, but they don't think that they have the strength of a Kage. Now that the matter has been made clear, don't mention it again in the future. After finalizing the matter, 3 generations continued. This time your Team 11 did a good job and made a great contribution to the village. So the village has decided to reward you with an additional opportunity to learn advanced ninjutsu. You don't need to make a decision right now. You can come to me at any time after thinking about it. The 4 members of Team 11 nodded in unison, then left Naruto's office one after another. After walking out of the Naruto building, Guy hurriedly asked, "Jishui, did you really kill hundreds of Cloud Ninjas by yourself?" Jishui glanced at Hyojin, then nodded to Guy. At this time, Kakashi said in a low voice, "Thank you." Although he was shocked by Jishui's strength, Kakashi was even more grateful to Jishui for keeping his Manjikyu Sharingan a secret. Jishui shook his head. "I just did it for the sake of the Uchiha clan, that's all." When she learned that Kakashi had awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, even Jishui herself had a strong negative emotion. It can be imagined that once this news is leaked to the Uchiha clan, the consequences would be unimaginable. The 4 chatted for a while. Then Guy pulled Kakashi to spar, while Hyojin and Jishui walked to a secluded place. Glancing thoughtfully behind him, Hyojin whispered, "Thank you." Chapter 82. Looking at Jishui's tired face, Hyojin said, "Don't worry, things will definitely turn for the better." Jishui said, "I hope so." The reason why the village is pressing Uchiha step by step is actually a reflection of the village's own weakness. And the initiator of all this is not a bystander. It is Uchiha Obsidian who has been watching Mai in the dark and trying to bite him at any time. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to describe the current 3rd generation as mentally and physically exhausted. Because of the growth of age, the strength of 3 generations has begun to decline from the peak. If his carefully selected successor 4 generations didn't die in battle, this would be nothing. But with the unexpected death of the 4th generation heir in the prime of his life, everything changed. The current trouble in front of Mai, whether it is the Cloud Village outside the village or the Uchiha Obsidian inside the village, can be said to be the aftermath caused by the accidental death of 4 generations. If 4 generations were still there, Ninetales' human Jinchuriki was still there, Cloud Village wouldn't dare to move at all, and Uchiha wouldn't dare to have any crooked thoughts. Mai's subsequent series of bad luck may have disappeared. Then 4 generations died, so Mai was in chaos. Glancing behind him, Hyojin then whispered, "Someone is following us." Jishui nodded. "Well, I found it when I came." After a little thought, Hyojin said, "It should be the root of Danzo." Squad 11 is the Umbu of Naruto. They're the only ones who follow and monitor others. No one will follow and monitor them. Because if Naruto doesn't trust them, he will directly remove their identity as Umbu, instead of sending other Umbu to monitor them. Jishui said calmly, "I won't harm the village. I'm not afraid of their monitoring." Hyojin said, "You think things are too simple?" Jishui asked curiously, "Senpai, what do you mean?" Monitoring is a signal. This not only shows that Danzo doesn't trust us, but also that he is not afraid of us. After a pause, Hyojin's mouth slightly raised. He can distrust us, but he can't be afraid of us. Jishui has always mistakenly believed that Hyojin in the state of chakra is the normal strength of Hyojin. So in his eyes, Hyojin is the strongest in Mai. Even Naruto 3 generations, or Jiraiya, is inferior to Hyojin. So listening to Hyojin, he immediately asked worriedly, "Senpai, you don't really want to do anything to Danzo-sama, do you?" Seeing the terrified look on Homusubi's face, Kuroto knew that Homusubi wouldn't dare to do anything to Konoha's higher-ups. So he said, "You don't need to do anything. Just keep it a secret for me. Those who are really afraid of Danzo, to put it bluntly, are those my ninjas who will not defect. And for those ninjas who have the option of defecting, Danzo is nothing. In a dense forest outside my village. Fire release, great fireball jutsu." After releasing the fire release jutsu, Uchiha Shinichi knelt on the ground panting, but soon he stood up again and threw the shuriken at the target in the distance. For the whole morning, he has been practicing hard. Even if his clothes were soaked with sweat, he didn't have the slightest intention of stopping. Since the last time he challenged Hyojin and was carried back by Jishui, he has become the laughingstock of the Uchiha clan, falling into the endless ridicule and doubt of his clansmen. This kind of pain almost drove him crazy. Since that day, he rarely returned to the village, and whenever he has free time, he would come here and numb his nerves with heavy practice. In the distance, staring at the crazy practice of Uchiha Shinichi, the masked man sitting cross-legged on a branch said lightly, "Are you talking about him?" On the branch, Zetsu nodded and said, "I can feel the hatred in his heart." As an investigator of Akatsuki, Zetsu's perception is outstanding in the entire shinobi world, and because of some special reasons, he can even perceive the emotions of his targets. The masked man seemed to be reminded of something, and his tone was still cold. This kind of hatred is far from enough. Zetsu said, "This is the most suitable target that I can find for you at present. Most of the ninjas of the Uchiha clan are working in the police force, so under normal circumstances, the ninjas of the Uchiha clan rarely leave the village. Only Uchiha Shinichi is an exception, coupled with the fact that Uchiha Shinichi has the Sharingan of the 3 Tomo, as well as the strength of a Tokubetsu Jonin, and his heart is full of hatred. Zetsu immediately reported the information to the masked man. The masked man hesitated for a moment and finally nodded. "It's him, you wait here, I'll go see him." After saying that, the masked man's body twisted into a whirlpool and disappeared silently. After a while, the masked man appeared behind Shinichi Uchiha and said with a hoarse and deep voice, "Young Uchiha, what a mess." Shinichi Uchiha was shocked, and he quickly turned around and jumped away. "Who are you?" The masked man smiled. "Who I am is not important, but I can give you what you want." Uchiha Shinichi was infuriated. "What kind of person do you think I am? Who do you think I am?" "I am Shinichi Uchiha." The masked man slowly opened his arms, and his tone was still calm. "You are nothing." Shinichi Uchiha, who was deeply insulted, could no longer hold it in. He pulled out a short knife and pounced on the masked man. Seeing that the masked man stood there dumbly without dodging, a smile appeared on Shinichi Uchiha's ferocious face. "Go to hell." However, when the knife hit the masked man, it went straight through his body. The feeling from the handle clearly told Shinichi Uchiha that his knife did not hit anything. Shinichi Uchiha punched him in the stomach, while the masked man was still in shock. Shinichi Uchiha, who was knocked to the ground, still looked at the masked man in disbelief. I clearly hit you just now. Why did you? Is it an illusion?" Thinking that he had guessed the truth, the 3 Tomo in Shinichi Uchiha's eyes started to spin rapidly. The masked man said lightly, "You keep calling me Uchiha. Uchiha, is that all you have?" Shinichi Uchiha clenched his teeth and said, "I have broken your illusion." As he spoke, he stood up, quickly formed a seal with both hands, and shouted, "Fire release, great fireball technique." In an instant, A huge fireball flew towards the masked man. Boom! Accompanied by a roar, a row of trees was hit by the fireball and burned into charcoal. After careful observation, there was no sign of the masked man. Shinichi Uchiha mumbled, "Is he dead?" Chapter 83. It didn't take long for the distorted space vortex to appear again. Uchiha Shinichi was thrown out of the whirlpool and fell heavily on the ground. Half of his face was buried in the soil, and he looked extremely miserable. Uchiha Shinichi's body was full of injuries, and he was thrown out of the whirlpool and fell heavily on the ground with half of his face buried in the soil. At that moment, the masked man walked out of the distorted vortex and said calmly, "Can't you even stand up?" Uchiha Shinichi struggled to lift his head and glared at the masked man. His eyes were filled with stubbornness and hatred. The masked man crossed his arms in front of his chest and said with a smile, "Not bad." Uchiha Shinichi coughed and asked in a hoarse voice, Who are you? What kind of ninjutsu was that?" "I've said it before. It doesn't matter who I am." After a pause, the masked man said with a smile, "What's important is that I can give you what you want." Uchiha Shinichi was confused. "What I want?" The masked man looked around and shrugged. "Why are you cultivating here?" Uchiha Shinichi said name, Hyojin. The masked man was stunned. He then asked with a smile, "Is this person powerful?" Although he was reluctant, Uchiha Shinichi nodded helplessly. Uchiha lost to the Hyuga family. The masked man smiled and continued to tempt him. "With your talent, it's not difficult to defeat the person called Hyojin." Uchiha Shinichi stared at the masked man vigilantly. He opened his mouth, but did not say anything. His face was filled with hesitation. Seeing that Uchiha Shinichi was tempted, the masked man did not push him too hard. Instead, he spread his hands and said, "You can find me here if you've made up your mind." With that, the masked man disappeared into the vortex. Uchiha Shinichi struggled to stand up. He looked around in panic, then dragged his wounded body and staggered towards the village. Not long after, the masked man returned to the tree. Zetsu, who had half of his body sticking out, looked at the back of Uchiha and Shinichi as they left and said, "Is there a need to go to such an extent? It's very likely that he told me about it." The masked man shook his head. "He won't." "Why?" "Because he craves power." The masked man sat down cross-legged and continued, "He's more talented than I expected. With some stimulation, you might be able to awaken those eyes." Hyojin's home. After returning home, Hyojin concentrated his mind and seriously studied the four-symbol seal again. Perhaps it's because he carefully felt the truth-seeking ball. Kuroto has a deeper understanding of the changes in the chakra attribute, so when he opened the scroll of the four-symbol seal this time, the things that he didn't understand before suddenly became clear. The changes in chakra's attributes are both the foundation and the core of the four-symbol seal. Once the changes in chakra's attributes and the four-symbol seal are integrated, then it's not far from completely mastering the four-symbol seal. After studying for a while, Hyojin took a sip of tea and thought to himself, "At this rate, I'll be able to completely master the four-symbol seal in 3 days at most." Thinking of the promise he made to Class 11 3 generations ago, he suddenly felt that mastering the Whirlpool clan's sealing technique was not that far away. Suddenly, Hyojin seemed to notice something. His brows slightly furrowed, and he activated the Byakugan. In the vision of the Byakugan, there was a faint chakra hidden behind a big tree outside the courtyard. Judging from the chakra's amount, it was at least at the level of a Tokubetsu Jonin. They're already openly monitoring the door. Obviously, the root who was responsible for monitoring Hyojin knew that Hyojin had the Byakugan, and knew that no matter how he disguised himself, he couldn't escape the detection of the Byakugan, so he simply put the surveillance in the open. "I'm a subordinate of Naruto Zumbu. Without the consent of the 3 generations, the Danzo wouldn't do things so crudely." After a while, Hyojin continued to think, "Now is not the time to turn hostile. Let's wait until I learn the sealing technique." The 3 generations and the Danzo are different. As the shadow of the village, the 3 generations are still very concerned about their face. Since the three generations promised the whole class a chance to learn advanced ninjutsu, as long as Hyojin doesn't act recklessly, the three generations will definitely fulfill their promise. After making up his mind, Hyojin didn't go anywhere and wholeheartedly studied the four-symbol seal at home. 3 days passed in a flash. As Kuroto expected, after mastering the trick, Kuroto quickly understood the key parts of the four-symbol seal. Although there are still a few details that he hasn't fully understood, but these details will take time and effort to figure out little by little, so it can't be rushed. With the scroll of the four-symbol seal in hand, Hyojin came to Naruto's office. After returning the scroll, he once again made a request to the three generations to learn the sealing technique, and considering that this might be his last official learning opportunity, he didn't hide it and directly told the three generations that he wanted to learn the Uzumaki clan sealing technique. Regarding Hyojin's request, the three generations had some doubts. But in Saname-sama's opinion, Kuroto's request to learn Fuinjutsu is better than Fuinjutsu. After all, Fuinjutsu is more inclined towards defense. And even if Kuroto mastered the Fuinjutsu of the Uzumaki clan, it wouldn't pose much harm to the village. Moreover, apart from the ghoul seal, which was a forbidden technique that could perish together with the enemy, the other powerful sealing techniques of the Vortex clan often required the bloodline of the Vortex clan to be used. After thinking about it, the three generations finally took out a scroll called Contract Seal from the secret database and gave it to Hyojin, and ordered him to return the scroll within a month. After obtaining the contract seal, Hyojin continued to stay at home and didn't go out, wholeheartedly studying the contract seal. Compared to the wide range of uses of the four-symbol seal, the scope of application of the contract seal was much narrower. It was mainly used to block the contractual relationship between the enemy and the psychic item. But this didn't mean that the contract seal was inferior to the four-symbol seal. On the contrary, Hyojin vaguely felt that the sealing technique that the four generations used to seal the dragon vein contained part of the content of the contract seal. This was because when Hyojin first got the scroll of the contract seal, he realized that the isolation ability of the contract seal was very strong, and the dragon vein and the Lulon Queen's bloodline had an inexplicable relationship. No one knew if there was some kind of contractual relationship between them. Chapter 84. When it comes to contracts, it will involve the soul, bloodline, and other illusory and indescribable things, so the difficulty of learning contract seal is no less than that of the four-symbol seal. However, the current Hyojin is no longer a rookie when it comes to seal techniques. After the guidance of the Miko of the Land of Demons, as well as the in-depth study of the four-symbol seal, Kuroto's current attainments in seal techniques can barely be regarded as minor achievements. Especially when it comes to Uzumaki seals, it is not too much of an exaggeration to say that Kuroto is half an expert. After half a day of serious study, Kuroto estimated that it will take at least 7 days to completely master contract seal. Fortunately, the Konoha and Kyumo village are currently discussing peace talks, so Team 11 has no task, so 7 days is not too long or too short for him. After another 4 days, all the members of Team 11 suddenly came to Hyojin's house together. Glancing at Kakashi, Jishui, and Guy, Hyojin smiled and said, "Why did you all come to my house together?" Guy is an impatient person, so he immediately said, "Kuroto, have you heard?" Hyojin casually replied, "Heard what?" For the past few days, he has been staying at home and studying contract seal wholeheartedly, to the point where he doesn't pay attention to the outside world. Guy hurriedly said, "It's about the negotiation between the Konoha and Kyumo." At this time, Jishui also said, "Kuroto-san, the peace talks between the Konoha and Kyumo have broken down." Hyojin was a little surprised. What? In his previous life, when the Konoha and Kyumo signed the peace agreement, there was indeed a mess where Kyumo's negotiator kidnapped the daughter of the Hyuga clan. But at that time, the peace agreement between the Konoha and Kyumo had basically been negotiated. Now, the peace talks have broken down before they even finished, which really puzzled Hyojin. Soon, Kakashi, as the captain of Team 11, explained the ins and outs of the matter in detail. It turned out that it was not only Mai's side who was dissatisfied with the peace talks, but many people in Kyomo's side were also dissatisfied with the peace talks. They believed that as long as they persisted, Mai's position as the #1 shinobi village in the shinobi world could be pulled down. In a situation where both sides had grievances, the peace talks naturally couldn't continue. Hyojin pondered for a moment, then smiled and said, "You don't have to worry too much. We in Cloud Village can't fight anymore. The 3 generations and Lei Ying are well aware of this, so the peace talks will continue." Guy asked curiously, "Why are you so sure?" Hyojin smiled and said, "There are not only 2 shinobi villages in the shinobi world. If we fight each other, it would only benefit other shinobi villages in the end." Regardless of whether it was the blurry memories from his previous life or the summary of various aspects of information in this life, Hyojin is sure that Cloud Village's surprise attack on Mai was just a test. If Mai doesn't have much power to fight back, then they will definitely go all out. But once Konoha proves that they're not a lamb that can be slaughtered by others, then Kyomo's test this time will have a result, and there will be no need for them to continue to take risks for other shinobi villages. After sending off the members of Team 11, Hyojin's side, it seems that the peace talks between Konoha and Cloud Village will be extremely long. Although it is known that the 2 sides will eventually sign a peace agreement, the peace talks will probably fall into a long stalemate before the grievances between the 2 sides are appeased. But for Hyojin, there are only advantages and no disadvantages. As long as the negotiations with Cloud Village continue, it is impossible for Konoha to take the risk of chaos and attack Uchiha, so Uchiha can be temporarily maintained as a shield. Hyojin mastered the contract seal 5 days later than expected. The main reason for this is that he didn't have the opportunity to practice. Before studying the 4-symbol seal, he could use anything at home to practice the sealing technique, but the contract seal is different. It requires a real contract-related object to be used as the target of the sealing technique. Therefore, Hyojin can't find a suitable object to practice on. Fortunately, the scroll given to him by the 3 generations clearly explained the key points of the contract seal, so even if he doesn't practice, he can still barely master it. When Hyojin returned the contract seal scroll to the 3 generations, the 3 generations were taken aback. The 3 generations thought that it would take at least a month for Hyojin to master the contract seal, but they didn't expect that it only took Hyojin 13 days to return the scroll. In his memory, it took the 4 generations nearly 15 days to master this technique. Therefore, the 3 generations couldn't help but think highly of Hyojin, thinking that Hyojin is a rare sealing technique genius. After returning the scroll, Hyojin then made a request to go out and travel. The 3 generations looked at Kuroto and asked, "Why do you have such an idea?" Hyojin has already thought of an excuse. "I want to find a suitable summoned beast. It is not unusual for a ninja to go out and travel. Jiraiya is a typical example because he is almost not in the village all year round. But going out and traveling needs the approval of the village. On this point, even Jiraiya is no exception. Otherwise, he will be regarded as a betrayal by the village. Of course, if the background is strong enough and the strength is strong enough, like Tsunade Heim, then it is not called betrayal, but running away. As an Anbu directly under Naruto, it is reasonable to say that Hyojin is not qualified to apply to go out and travel, especially at this critical juncture when the village is negotiating peace with Cloud Village. Therefore, Hyojin had to come up with a reason that the 3 generations can't refuse. Because the summoned beast is related to the combat power of a ninja, finding a suitable summoned beast naturally became a legitimate reason for most ninjas to go out and travel in Mai. After pondering for a long time, the 3 generations loosened their mouths and said, "I can only give you 2 months of vacation." After thanking the 3 generations, Hyojin hurriedly returned home, took the prepared salute, and walked towards the village gate alone. The main purpose of this trip is nothing else but to see what kind of seal 4 generations put on the dragon vein and try to crack it. As long as it is confirmed that the seal imposed on the dragon vein by 4 generations can be broken, his artificial tailed beast plan can immediately be launched. After registering at the village gate, Hyojin left the village without looking back, and the root member who was responsible for monitoring him had to bite the bullet and follow him. I have to find a way to get rid of him. Aware of the tail behind him, Hyojin secretly pondered. Suddenly, a chain sprang up from the ground and firmly wrapped around Hyojin, who was walking. Almost at the same time, a figure rushed out of the trees on both sides, one on the left and one on the right, stabbed a sword in their hands into Hyojin's ribs. Chapter 85. Seeing that his attack had succeeded, the attacker on the other side smiled sinisterly and said, "Big brother, this 25 million tails guy is nothing. Didn't we kill him in an instant?" Bang! As soon as his voice fell, Hyojin, who was pierced by 2 sharp blades in his ribs, turned into a cloud of smoke. The 2 attackers were stunned at the same time. Shadow, clone. At this time, a figure suddenly fell from the sky and directly stepped on the heads of the 2. 1 foot, 1 foot. The 2 attackers were trampled to the ground. This figure is Hyojin. He stepped on the heads of the 2 and slowly squatted down and said helplessly, "Hey, is my name not written on the bounty? You 2 are just squatting in the grass like that. Aren't you looking down on me too much?" Damn it, how can it be a shadow clone? The 2 bounty ninjas who couldn't move with their heads still couldn't believe what they were seeing. Hyojin's face turned cold as he thought to himself, is the deterrent power of the Hyuga family in the ninja world so weak? In his opinion, since his name is written on the bounty, then the bounty ninjas who dared to accept the bounty should know that he is a Byakugan Kekkai Genkai. But these 2 bounty ninjas don't seem to have any concept of Byakugan, and their skills are not weak. Judging from the ambush just now, both of them are at least Chunin level. This made Hyojin a little uncertain. He doesn't know whether these 2 bounty ninjas are too ignorant, or the Hyuga family doesn't have much deterrent power left in the ninja world. After tying up the 2 bounty ninjas, Hyojin returned to the village. In the mission center of the village, Kuroto learned that these 2 guys are traitorous ninjas of the Mist Village. After defecting from the village, they committed all sorts of crimes and committed a lot of crimes, so they also carry a bounty of nearly 3 million ryo on their heads. At the same time, Hyojin also learned that the Mist Village has recently fallen into internal strife. It is said that several of the Mist shinobi clans directly participated in the rebellion, and the entire Mist Village was in chaos, so a large number of Mist shinobi defected. Some became wandering ninjas, and some became bounty ninjas. After solving the matter of the bounty nin, Hyojin didn't delay and once again left the village. Walking on the road, he didn't seem to be very happy, even though he had just received a huge windfall. On the contrary, the expression on his face gradually became cold. When he was attacked, he was worried that the enemy would launch a follow-up attack, so his real body had been hiding in the dark and carefully observing the surroundings. Because of this, Kuroto noticed that when he was attacked, the root ninja, who was responsible for monitoring him, didn't have the slightest intention to help him. No matter what, everyone was a ninja from the same village. His own people were attacked, but he didn't seem to care. This undoubtedly shows that the root ninja is not only monitoring Hyojin, but also treating Hyojin as an enemy. After realizing this, the killing intent in Hyojin's heart was boiling. At first, Kuroto just thought that the root ninja was just obeying orders and couldn't help himself, so he just wanted to get rid of him. There was no need to kill him, but now his thinking has changed. In the evening, Hyojin chose a flat place in the forest as a campsite, then lit a campfire and ate roasted rabbit meat while resting. Not far away, the root ninja who was responsible for monitoring Hyojin was sitting on a branch of a big tree, leaning against the trunk, looking in the direction of the campfire. He actually lit a campfire. His vigilance is too low. How can such a person be qualified to be an umbu? The root ninja chewed the dry food he carried with him while cursing in his heart. The codename of this root ninja is Kuroto, and he is very familiar with this kind of task because he has only performed 2 kinds of tasks. One is surveillance, and the other is assassination. And these two kinds of tasks can often be regarded as the same kind of task because the target he is responsible for monitoring will eventually become the target he wants to assassinate. Suddenly, Kuroda felt a killing intent. With many years of experience in assassination, he was keenly aware that something was staring at him. Ninjutsu. Fake beast painting. Almost subconsciously, he rose into the air. While turning over and jumping down from the tree, he took out a pen and paper in midair and quickly drew an ink bird. Whoosh! However, before he could land on the ink bird, two iron spears quickly pierced through the ink bird, turning it into a ball of ink that splattered everywhere in midair. Landing awkwardly on the ground, Ding-Yu discovered that the one who attacked him was a mysterious ninja wrapped in bandages, and he couldn't make out the slightest bit of his appearance. Then, he noticed the iron sand floating around the mysterious ninja and was suddenly shocked. Magnet release? As a member of the Root, Kuroda has heard of all kinds of strange bloodstains and secret techniques, so he recognized this unique kekai of the Sand Crypsis at a glance. Kuroda asked nervously, "Who are you?" Even in the Sand Crypsis, there are very few ninjas who have mastered magnet release. At present, only the missing 3 generations of Kazekage and the current 4 generations of Kazekage are well known. Kuroda doesn't think that the 3 generations of Kazekage or the 4 generations of Kazekage would come to this wilderness to attack him for no reason. So in his opinion, the mysterious ninja in front of him is most likely a traitorous ninja of the Sand Crypsis who has mastered magnet release. The reason why he guessed that the other party is a traitorous ninja of the Sand Crypsis is because Kuroda feels that he has neither important information nor important items on him. So the Sand Crypsis will never send an elite ninja who has mastered magnet release to assassinate him. What's more, Mai and the Sand Crypsis already have the intention to form an alliance, so there is no reason for the Sand Crypsis to attack Mai's ninja at this time. The other party's target is Hyojin. Considering the huge bounty on Hyojin's back, Kuroda suddenly had this suspicion, because only a huge bounty is worth such a degree of Sand Crypsis's traitorous ninja. He must think that I am in the way, so he wants to get rid of me first, and then make a move on Hyojin. Thinking of this, Kuroda has an idea. In his opinion, if the other party's target is Hyojin, as long as he leads the other party to Hyojin's side, the other party will naturally ignore him and turn to attack Hyojin. At that time, he can easily escape. After all, his strength as a Tokubetsu Jonin is not enough to fight against a powerful ninja who has mastered magnet release. Ninjutsu. Fake beast drawing. After quickly drawing 2 ink lines to delay the other party, Kuroda immediately used the body flicker technique and fled towards the bonfire not far away. Chapter 86. After a few leaps, Ding-Yu arrived in front of the bonfire. He glanced at Hyojin, who was sitting on the ground, gnawing on a rabbit leg, and the corner of his mouth rose, revealing an unfathomable smile, and said in his heart, "Go to hell, idiot!" At this time, the mysterious ninja who used magnet release also rushed to the bonfire. The iron sand turned into countless senbunken, like raindrops, and shot towards Ding-Yu. Ding-Yu was shocked and immediately realized his target is not Hyojin, but me. With Ding-Yu's strength, he simply can't avoid the rain-like attacks. So even if he dodged in the blink of an eye, his body was still hit by dozens of senbunken. Compared to shuriken and kunai, the power of senbunken is undoubtedly much weaker. So although Ding-Yu's body was full of senbunken, he won't die for a while. After staggering a few steps, Ding-Wei collapsed beside a big tree. His trembling hand pointed at Kuroda, who was still silently gnawing on the rabbit leg. You are in cahoots with him." At this point, he naturally knew that the other party is likely to be with Hyojin, but he can't figure out how an elite of Sand Crypsis who mastered magnet release would be with Hyojin. At this time, Hyojin stood up, slowly walked in front of Ding-Yu, and calmly asked, "What order did Danzo give you?" Cough, cough. After a short coughing, Ding-Yu coldly snorted. "You dare to collude with Sand Crypsis. Danzo, Sama will not let you go." As if thinking of something, Hyojin said, The root ninjas should have a curse mark. It seems that we won't be able to get any useful information out of them. All the root ninjas have a special curse mark called Curse of the Tongue. This curse mark engraved on the tongue can prevent the root ninjas from revealing any information about Danzo. Returning to the campfire, Hyojin continued to eat the rabbit meat, as if everything around him had nothing to do with him. Dingyu looked at Hyojin with a puzzled expression, and then looked at the mysterious magnet release ninja who had been silent all this time. For a moment, he couldn't figure out the relationship between the two of them. In his eyes, Hyojin doesn't seem to care about the mysterious magnet release ninja at all, and the mysterious magnet release ninja doesn't seem to care about Hyojin's attitude of ignoring him. But no matter what, Dingyu felt the need to spread the news that Hyojin was colluding with the Sand Crypsis. So he mustered the last of his strength and unrolled a scroll. Ninjutsu, fake super beast art. Bam bam bam. Following a series of muffled sounds, small and nimble ink birds flew out from the scroll that Dingyu had opened. There were dozens of these ink birds, and in the blink of an eye, they scattered and disappeared into the quiet night. Looking at the ink birds flying away, Dingyu, whose vision was gradually blurring, showed a gratified smile. But suddenly, the smile on his face turned into panic, because he found that all the ink birds were attracted by an invisible force and fell into the hands of Hyojin, and finally turned into a mass of ink. Amidst his terror, an iron spear mercilessly pierced through his head. After eating and wiping the ink on his hands, Hyojin put away the 3 generations Kazekage puppets, and then carried Dingyu's body towards the nearest my outpost. Arriving at the outpost, Hyojin said to the Chunin in charge, "I was attacked by a bounty ninja, and in the battle, unfortunately, this root colleague was killed. You send the body back to the village, and report the situation to Naruto-sama." Looking at Dingyu, who has long been dead, the Chunin was embarrassed. In Konoha, even Homusubi and Suijin, who are from noble families, are not willing to deal with a root shinobi, so it can be imagined that civilian ninjas are even more respectful towards the root shinobi. Seeing that the Chunin was a little embarrassed, Hyojin patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Don't worry, just do as I say. If a root ninja asks you, you can tell them everything you know." Hyojin's current identity is not only a Tokubetsu Jonin, but also a member of the Umbu, which is directly under Naruto. For ordinary Chunin in the village, he has the power to temporarily assign tasks. So although the Chunin was very reluctant, he still gritted his teeth and agreed. After a few simple words, Hyojin left the outpost. For Hyojin, it is much better to send Dingyu's body back to the village in an open and above-board manner than to dispose of it quietly. First of all, the fact that he carries a huge bounty on his back is well known to the village's upper echelons. And just today, he was assassinated by a bounty ninja. So pushing Dingyu's death to the bounty ninja is definitely a justifiable reason. Second, it can also be regarded as a release of attitude towards Danzo. As for how Danzo will react, Hyojin doesn't care. Danzo is not the kind of person who will let you go if you give in. The original Jishuei was so obedient to him, but the result was that one of his Manjikyu Sharingan was stolen, and he was forced to commit suicide. Therefore, even if Hyojin gives in now, Danzo will not let Hyojin go. Even if Hyojin agreed to Danzo's invitation from the beginning and joined Root with Danzo's temperament, he will still engrave Hyojin with the seal of Root, because Danzo doesn't trust anyone at all, even his own trusted subordinates. A 2-month vacation is not short, but it is not long either. Hyojin can't spend a lot of time on the road, so he checked the map, chose a remote and rugged route, and then used the magnet release of the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets to fly in the air, and quickly rushed towards the land of wind. Hyojin's journey was more daunting than dangerous, and after 2 days, he finally passed through the land of river and entered the territory of the land of wind. The ruins of the ancient city of Rorin are located in the vast sea of sand of the land of wind. Even with a map, if one is not familiar with the local terrain, it is difficult to find it. Fortunately, Hyojin can fly with the help of magnet release, so his search is much faster than the average ninja. But even so, It took him nearly 10 days to find the ruins of the ancient city of Roran in the vast sea of sand. Looking at the collapsed towers in front of him, Hyojin secretly sighed. If it weren't for these tilted towers, I really wouldn't have found the dragon vein underground. At such a close distance, Hyojin did not perceive a trace of chakra emitted from the dragon vein, which shows how strong the seal of the 4 generations of the dragon vein is. But for this result, Kuroda had already expected it. If the seal of the 4 generations of the dragon vein was so easy to crack, then the Sand Crypsis would not have left the dragon vein as a treasure trove. Chapter 87. As soon as he stepped into the Lulan ruins, Hyojin felt an oppressive feeling. The oppressive feeling was not reflected in chakra. Instead, it was reflected in his soul. It was like a normal person who had mistakenly entered a beast's hunting ground. White Eye, activate! With a low grunt, Hyojin activated White Eye and walked toward the central tower of the Lulan ruins while carefully observing his surroundings. In his White Eye vision, everything around him was dead silent. There were no signs of life in the entire Lulan ruins, let alone chakra. This is a little strange. Seeing this scene, a trace of doubt surged in Kuroda's heart. No matter how few creatures there were in the desert, there were still quite a number of creatures like snakes, insects, rats, and ants. Logically speaking, with so many buildings left behind in the Lulan ruins, it should be a good place to block the wind and sand. There shouldn't be no signs of life at all. Despite the doubts in his heart, Hyojin did not feel the slightest bit afraid. No matter what was wrong here, it would not be too much of a threat to him now. After all, even if the worst-case scenario happened and the dragon vein chakra went berserk, he was confident that he could escape unscathed. Soon, Hyojin arrived at the place where 4 generations had sealed the dragon vein. It really is a compound sealing technique. With just a glance, Hyojin could tell that the sealing technique that 4 generations had used on the dragon vein was a compound sealing technique that was a combination of many sealing techniques. After getting closer, he squatted down and carefully identified each sealing technique. As he analyzed, he mumbled to himself, "The foundation should still be the 4-symbol seal, but there's also the contract seal mixed in, as well as another sealing technique." After a rough analysis, Hyojin could conclude that 4 generations dragon vein seal was a combination of at least 3 powerful sealing techniques. So far, he could only recognize the 4-symbol seal and the contract seal. As for the 3rd sealing technique, Hyojin had no clue at all. It didn't seem to be a sealing technique of the Maelstrom lineage. At that time, 4 generations probably hadn't inherited Naruto's position, so there were only 2 ways for him to learn sealing techniques. One was to learn the Maelstrom lineage from his wife, Jushina, and the other was to learn the Mount Myaboka lineage's sealing technique from his teacher, Jiraiya. At that thought, Hyojin had a guess. The 3rd sealing technique in the Dragon Vein Seal was most likely a sealing technique from Mount Wondrous Wood. Standing up and taking a few steps back, Kuroda rested his chin on one hand and pondered for a while, feeling that with his current attainments in sealing techniques, breaking the seal of Yondaime Suma's Dragon Vein is still possible. After all, the entire Dragon Vein Seal was based on the 4-symbol seal, and the 4-symbol seal was the sealing technique he was most familiar with. So, it wasn't impossible to break it by force. However, 4 generations Dragon Vein Seal contained part of the contract seal, which proved that there was a contract between the Lulan Queen's bloodline and the Dragon Vein. So, to be safe, when breaking the seal of Yondaime Suma's Dragon Vein, it is best to bring the bloodline of Queen Roran with him. In case the Dragon Vein chakra goes berserk, it will be difficult to subdue it. But where can I find the Lulan Queen's bloodline? My village, Root Base. Swoosh, a figure landed and half knelt in front of Danzo and reported, "Lord Danzo, we have finished examining Ding Yu's body." Leaning? Collecting the magpie to move? Collecting the Rongqi to feed the Mei Bo Gui's bones to the hilt? The half-kneeling Root member immediately replied, "There were a total of 37 wounds on Ding Yu's body. The fatal wound was on the head, and because the brain was completely damaged, we were unable to obtain any information. The more Danzo heard, the more gloomy his face became. We heard the news of Ding Yu's death. His first reaction was that it was definitely Hyojin's doing. But after thinking about it, he wasn't so sure. Because in his heart, Ding Yu's strength should be above Hyojin's. What's more, Ding Yu had carried out many assassination missions, including many Jonin-level targets. Whether it was strength or experience, Ding Yu was ranked among the top of the root base. So, even if Ding Yu wasn't a match for Hyojin, he shouldn't have died without any information. At this time, the root member continued. During the autopsy, we also found a small amount of iron sand in Ding Yu's body. Danzo's eyes trembled. Iron sand. Yes, the iron sand is very fine, uniform in size, and chakra's conductivity is very good. It seems that under the nourishment of chakra for a long time, it's like the root member wanted to say his guess, but he felt that it was too ridiculous, so he didn't know how to report it. Danzo had been in charge of the village's external spies for a long time, so he was one of the most knowledgeable people in Mai. So, he didn't need the root ninja to say it. He already guessed what the root ninja wanted to say. San Crypsis, Danzo suddenly asked, did you investigate the Chunin who sent Ding Yu's body back to the village? The root ninja replied, yes, there is no problem with his background, and he has nothing to do with the Hyuga clan. Danzo sternly said, search his brain, I want to know everything. The root ninja heard this and said in a low voice, Danzo, Sama, if we do this, the 3 generations, forcibly searching the brain has a lot of hidden dangers, and, if not careful, it can cause irreversible damage to the ninja's brain. Therefore, this cruel method of interrogation is usually only used on enemy captives and traitorous ninjas. Danzo impatiently waved his hand. Do as I say. Yes. The root ninja had no choice but to respond, and then quietly left. Not long after, the root ninja returned and reported to Danzo. Danzo, Sama, we have interrogated him. The Chunin has nothing to do with Hyojin. Danzo asked, when Hyojin handed Ding Yu's body to him, did he have any injuries? The root ninja shook his head and said, no, in the Chunin's memory, there are no injuries on Hyojin's body. Danzo then asked, then where did Hyojin go? He doesn't know. Danzo thought to himself, was it Hyojin who killed Ding Yu? Or was it the bounty ninja who targeted Hyojin? At this time, the root ninja said weakly, Danzo-sama, during the interrogation, we made a mistake and damaged part of the Chunin's brain. He may not be able to continue being a ninja in the future. Danzo said coldly, just get rid of him. But the root ninja naturally understands the meaning of the word get rid of, and he has done many such things in the past. But in the past, he only dealt with enemies and traitors. This is the first time he has to deal with an innocent person. Looking at the root ninja in front of him, Danzo coldly said, don't make this old man repeat it twice. Chapter 88. Kusanagi Village, Mission Center. A middle-aged woman asked with a smile, guest, what commission do you need? Hyojin replied politely, I want to find someone, but I don't know her whereabouts, so I want to entrust the ninjas of your village to help me find her. Looking for someone? No problem. Please fill in the information here. Taking the information, Hyojin glanced at it slightly. The information required to be filled in is only the information of the person Hyojin wants to find, as well as Hyojin's commission amount. As for Hyojin's own information, there is no requirement to fill in. Seeing this, Hyojin secretly nodded. The Kusanagi village is not large, and if they want to compete with other villages for commission tasks, they can only relax the requirements. This is also one of the important reasons why Hyojin chose to come to the Kusanagi village. After filling in the information he knows about the descendants of Queen Roran one by one, Hyojin thought for a while and wrote 1 million ryo in the column of commission amount. Looking at the information handed back by Hyojin, the middle-aged woman was taken aback. 1 million ryo? This is the commission money for an A-level mission. Will you encounter other ninjas for this mission? Hyojin smiled and said, the person I want to find is likely to be in the territory of the Land of Wind. Just in case, I hope that your village can assign an excellent ninja to accept my commission. Seeing that it is a big business, the middle-aged woman's eyes narrowed into slits. Guest, you can rest assured, our Kusanagi village is the strongest shinobi village outside of the 5 great shinobi villages. There are many strong ninjas in the village. We will definitely meet your requirements. Hyojin smiled slightly. Among the small shinobi villages, although the Kusanagi village is not weak, it is definitely not the strongest shinobi village outside of the 5 great shinobi villages. In Hyojin's opinion, only the Hidden Rain village deserves this title. If it weren't for the geographical location of the Hidden Rain village being sandwiched between the 3 great shinobi villages of Mai, Sancrypsis, and Rock Village, the Hidden Rain village would have been promoted to the 6th great shinobi village in the Hanzo era. A few hours later, the 4 ninjas arrived in front of Hyojin. One of them looked up and down at Hyojin and said, "My name is Long Lan, a Jonin from the Kusanagi village. This time, my team and I will be responsible for your request." Hyojin smiled and said, "You all can call me Mr. Mu. I'll be entrusting this task to you all." Hyojin was quite satisfied with the 4 ninjas in front of him. Their leader was a Jonin named Dragon Orchid. Although he didn't look old, the chakra reaction in his body was very strong. Even among the Jonins, he was at a relatively good level. The other 3 ninjas were also at the level of Chunin, and they didn't seem to be mediocre. After leaving the Kusanagi village, a Chunin said to Hyojin, "Don't worry, Dragon Orchid-sama is one of the best experts in our village. A simple task like finding someone is a piece of cake for him." Hyojin smiled and said, "It seems that I'm very lucky to be able to hire you all." Another Chunin laughed and said, "I'm not afraid of scaring you, but our Dragon Orchid-sama is a master with a bounty of 10 million ryo. Even if you really encounter the ninjas of the Sancrypsis this time, you won't be in any danger." When Hyojin heard this, he carefully looked at Dragon Orchid, who was at the front of the team. He didn't expect that this Jonin would also carry a bounty on his back, and the amount is not small. In fact, this time Hyojin came to the Kusanagi village to commission a task. He was also helpless. After the ancient city of Rorin was abandoned, the people of Rorin lived a nomadic life of chasing oases and watergrass, so they don't have a fixed residence at all. It's too difficult for Hyojin to find them in a mere month and a half. Therefore, Hyojin came up with the idea of finding a shinobi village to commission a task. The Sancrypsis and Mai are obviously not suitable. Hyojin was the first to exclude them, and then the remaining Rock, Cloud, and Mist villages were also excluded one after another because they either have a grudge or are too far away from the Land of Wind. The remaining shinobi villages that are relatively close to the Land of Wind are only the Rain Village and the Grass Village. The Rain Village is currently the headquarters of the Akatsuki organization. It's like a dragon's pool and a tiger's den. Hyojin doesn't want to find trouble for himself, so after disguising himself, he took a detour and came to the Land of Grass. Hiring a grass ninja can get the intelligence support of the Grass Village, and with the intelligence power of a shinobi village, it's much easier to find the descendants of the Queen of Rorin. Land of Water. Sasori sat on a stone, panting while taking out a water bottle. After drinking a mouthful of water, he got up and looked at the battlefield in front of him. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise slightly. At this moment, in front of him, countless white bone spears broke out of the ground, like a bamboo forest covering the ground. Looking from a distance, it looks like a white bone forest. In the middle of the bone forest, there is a corpse lying on the ground. The corpse is also covered with sharp bone spurs, looking like a monster. Slowly walking to the side of the corpse, Scorpion shook open a scroll and then carefully sealed the corpse in the scroll. At this time, another figure appeared. Sasori turned his head and said coldly, "Orochimaru, you are late." Orochimaru smiled coldly and said, "It seems that the patriarch of the Kagaya clan is only SSO." The situation on the battlefield surprised Orochimaru. He really didn't expect that Sasori would be able to easily deal with the patriarch of the Kagaya clan. Sasori put away the scroll and said, "These guys of the Kagaya clan are all lunatics. If it weren't for my poison, it wouldn't have been so easy to deal with them." Orochimaru looked at the bone spears that broke out of the ground with interest and said with a smile, "You seem to have collected a lot of high-quality puppet materials in the turmoil of the Mist Village." Sasori glanced at Orochimaru and said, "Aren't you the same? The child in the dungeon was taken away by you, right? I thought I hid it from you." With an indifferent smile, Orochimaru said, "It's time to leave. The turmoil in the Mist Village seems to have subsided." Sasori shook his head and said, "Stay a few more days. The opportunity to hunt a Kekai, Genkai like this doesn't come often." Orochimaru pondered for a moment, then nodded and said, "Well, I'll stay here for a few more days." Orochimaru, who is found an orphan of the Kagaya clan, has no interest in staying in the Land of Water anymore. But since Sasori and he are partners, and since Sasori insisted on not leaving, he has no choice but to stay in the Land of Water for a few more days. Chapter 89. Orochimaru, wearing an ordinary kimono, was walking alone in the major towns of the Land of Water. Because of Sasori, he didn't leave the Land of Water as planned, and because there's almost no enemy in the Land of Water that needs him and Sasori to deal with, so he didn't stay with Sasori. The turmoil in the Mist Village has been going on for a long time, and this turmoil almost exhausted all the vitality of the Mist Village. Several famous families in the Mist Village, such as Kagaya and Yukichi, were destroyed one after another, and the clansmen with Kekkei Genkai either died or fled, scattered everywhere. Fortunately, the Land of Water is located in a remote corner, and the neighboring Mai and Kyumo are in a confrontation, so they don't have the energy to care about other things. Otherwise, whether the Mist Village can survive or not is unknown. Suddenly, a strong man with a sharp blade blocked Orochimaru's way and said fiercely, "Hand over the money." Orochimaru stretched out his slender tongue and wiped it slightly on his lips and said in a hoarse voice, "An idiot who can't even feel the danger. It's really sad." The strong man was furious. "You want to die?" Clang! Before the strong man's voice fell, the sharp blade in his hand slipped from his fingers and fell to the ground. Lowering his head with difficulty, he suddenly discovered that a green snake that was only as thick as a finger had bitten his throat. Orochimaru passed by the strong man. From beginning to end, his hand didn't leave his pocket. The strong man fell to the ground. No breath left his body. After wandering in the Land of Water for so long, there are very few people who dare to find trouble with Orochimaru, because even the weakest mist ninjas can feel the cold aura emanating from Orochimaru's body, which makes it impossible for strangers to get close to him. Only a pure civilian murderer like the strong man would foolishly come forward to die. From this, it can be seen that the turmoil in the Land of Water is not only limited to the ninja class. The lives of the civilians have also been seriously affected. The whole Land of Water can be said to be in chaos. After turning a corner, Orochimaru suddenly stopped. His eyes were attracted by a pile of rubbish in the corner. In front of the garbage dump, a ragged child was squatting on the ground, tearing up a small ball of black bread and distributing it to a few thin stray cats. The small stray cats meowed and were extremely intimate with the child. What a nice chakra." Orochimaru licked his lips and walked slowly to the garbage dump. The sudden approach of Orochimaru made the child feel afraid. He curled up and wanted to hide in the corner, but when he thought of the little wild cats under his feet, he gritted his teeth and opened his arms to protect the little wild cats. Orochimaru looked at the skinny child in front of him, then glanced at the breadcrumbs the child fed to the stray cats, and asked, "What's your name?" The child carefully replied, "My name is Bai." Staring at Bai's pure and clean eyes, Orochimaru shook his head, then turned around and left. The child himself was as thin as a stick, but he still shared the remaining food with the little wild cats. Even if he has a nice chakra, such a kind child is not suitable to be a ninja. So with just a glance, Orochimaru dispelled the idea of taking the child away. But after taking a few steps, he suddenly stopped, because he recalled that child named Shigo. Yugo was a child who could absorb nature energy, and it was precisely because of this child that Orochimaru added a new research project called Curse Seal to his research project. Looking back at Haku, Orochimaru murmured, "Such a pure child. Maybe he can bear that kind of power." At this moment, a figure landed beside Orochimaru. He was none other than Orochimaru's partner, Sasori. Sasori glanced at the thin Haku in the corner, then turned to Orochimaru and said, "Let's go. The person I'm looking for has appeared." Orochimaru smiled and said, "Are you sure you're looking for a person, not a corpse?" Sasori gritted his teeth and said, "I will turn him into a corpse." Orochimaru rarely saw Sasori so angry, so he pretended to be casual and asked, "Who are you looking for? I don't have the time to follow you around." "A ninja of your Mai, Land of Wind." With the help of Kusanagi, after a month, Hyojin finally found the traces of the Rorin survivors. Over a sand dune, Rorin pointed to the conspicuous oasis in the distance and said to Hyojin, "The Rorin survivors you are looking for are there." Hyojin looked over and saw a circle of caravans parked outside the oasis. Sparse figures were coming and going in the workshop. Some were fetching water from the oasis, some were taking care of camels and sheep, and some were making a fire to cook. Frowning, Hyojin wondered, why are there so few people? The entire convoy next to the oasis is only 200 or 300 people, which is far less than Kuroto's expectation. In his opinion, the number of Rorin survivors may not be that many, but it shouldn't be as few as 200 or 300. A local guide found by the Kusanagi quickly explained to Suijin, since the Rorin city was abandoned, these Rorin survivors have lost their livelihood. Some have left, and some have died. This is all that is left. Hyojin asked again, even if there is no town, their life should not be so miserable, right? Just as the guide wanted to explain, he suddenly saw something, so he pointed to the distance. "Look!" Hyojin looked in the direction of the guide's finger and saw 2 Sand Crypsis ninjas coming to the oasis and negotiating with the Rorin survivors there. Both sides seemed to be a bit unhappy. After a quarrel, the 2 Sand Crypsis ninjas left the oasis and gradually disappeared in the sand. Hyojin asked, "Why are the Sand Crypsis ninjas here?" The guide sighed and said, "I heard that the Sand Crypsis has been collecting taxes from these Rorin survivors. The 2 Sand Crypsis ninjas should be here to collect taxes." Hyojin pondered a little and understood the intention of the Sand Crypsis. How much tax can a convoy of 200 or 300 people collect? The Sand Crypsis did this, firstly, to use this as an excuse to monitor the Rorin survivors. Secondly, it may be that they want to use economic pressure to make the Rorin survivors completely submit to the Sand Crypsis village. In this way, the Sand Crypsis can legitimately occupy the Dragon Vein. Hyojin felt that these little tricks of the Sand Crypsis were very normal. After all, it would be really abnormal if the Sand Crypsis did not care about such a huge source of chakra, like the Dragon Vein. The Kusanagi ninja, Long Lon, asked, "Mr. Mu, do you need to go and confirm the person you are looking for?" Hyojin shook his head. "No need," Long Lon said. "In that case, what about our mission this time?" Chapter 90. Tetsuya accepted the rest of the money and asked Hyojin to sign the letter of entrustment. Then, he left with the ninja and the guide hired by the ninja. During the whole process, he didn't say a word. It seemed that he didn't care about Hyojin's search for the Rorin survivors at all. In fact, in this month of contact, Tetsuya, as a jonin, had long discovered that Hyojin, who was under the alias of Mr. Mu, was a ninja. After all, an ordinary person who has been running in the desert for a month, even if the body is strong, the spirit will be tired, but Kuroto is the same as them, not showing the slightest sign of fatigue. This alone shows that Kuroto has mastered the method of using chakra. As a ninja from a small ninja village, Tetsuya had seen all kinds of strange commissions. He even received commissions from ninjas from the 5 great ninja villages to assassinate ninjas from the same village. So, he had long understood that the less he knew about things that had nothing to do with him, the better it was for him. Hyojin was very satisfied with the ninja's self-awareness. If the Kusanagi shinobi doesn't get to the bottom of the mission, or shows signs of inquiring about the purpose of searching for the Rorin survivors, then Kuroto can only kill them. After sending away the ninja, Hyojin, who was hiding on the sand dune, carefully observed the Roran survivors in the oasis in the distance. Soon, his eyes fell on a red-haired woman. The woman looked about 20 years old, holding a baby in her arms, and her face was full of sadness. Hyojin said to himself with some uncertainty, "Is it her?" In his memory, the last queen of Roran was 4 or 5 years older than Kakashi, who was with 4 generations at that time. Hyojin and Kakashi were in the same generation, so the last queen should be 4 or 5 years older than Hyojin, which was about 20 years old. The age matched, the hair color also matched. In the team of 200 or 300 people, the only one that met the criteria was the woman. So Suijin finally identified the woman holding the baby as the last queen of Roran Kingdom. How pathetic! After sighing with emotion, Hyojin took out the scroll and summoned the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets. Now is not the time to come into contact with the Lulan Queen, because if something happened to the dragon vein while he was traveling, then it was very likely that the village would suspect him. Therefore, this 2-month trip was just his preliminary preparation. He had 2 purposes. The first was to confirm what kind of sealing technique the 4 generations had used on the dragon vein. The second was to confirm Lulan Queen's exact location. Now, that both of his goals have been achieved, he only needs to leave behind 3 generations of Kazekage puppets and let 3 generations of Kazekage puppets lurk and track the convoy of the Roran survivors, so that he can grasp the position of the Roran Queen in real time. As for himself, he could openly return to the village and clear his name. Then, he could think of a way to sneak out of the village and steal the dragon's vein without anyone knowing. Bang! Suddenly, a cloud of smoke rose. When the white smoke dissipated, the lazy figure of the one-eyed venom snake was revealed. Hyojin was slightly stunned. Only Orochimaru could send him a telepathic message, and Orochimaru hadn't contacted him for a long time, so he was very surprised by Orochimaru's sudden message. Taking the scroll in the one-eyed venom snake's mouth and unfolding it, Hyojin's face suddenly sank. What a lingering ghost. There was not much content on the scroll, just a warning message. Orochimaru told him that his whereabouts had been detected by Scorpion, and that Scorpion was coming to the country of wind. These days, in order to find the Roran survivors, Hyojin met a lot of people of all kinds. Among these people, there might be someone who saw through Hyojin's disguise. But it didn't matter now, because he had achieved his goal and didn't need to stay in the country of wind anymore. After thinking for a while, Hyojin took out a scroll from his body and handed it to the one-eyed venom snake. This scroll recorded the information of the Umbu members that Hyojin collected on a daily basis, including the Umbu squad that died in the conflict with Cloud Village. When he traded the artificial tailed bee scroll with Orochimaru, one of the 2 requests made by Orochimaru was that Hyojin should use the advantage of the Byakugan to collect information on the Umbu members. After so long, Hyojin should also give Orochimaru an explanation. After all, this time Orochimaru's message saved him a lot of trouble, and he had to return the favor. My village, Naruto's office. 3 generations were looking at the village outside the window with their hands behind their back. Danzo was sitting on the side, leaning on a cane, talking to a cripple, waving. Apart from Hyojin, the other 3 people of class 11 were standing in front of Naruto's desk with a nervous look on their faces. After a while, 3 generations turned around and asked the 3 people of class 11, "Have you finished looking at the documents?" Kakashi and the other 2 nodded. 3 generations asked, "What do you think? Is it possible that Hyojin did this?" Guy was the first to stand up and said, "Naruto-sama, Kuroda will never do anything to his companions from the same village." Putting the photo of Uchiha's corpse and the relevant documents back on Naruto's desk, Kakashi said, "I also believe in Kuroda." When he thought about how Hyojin led his team to return to the valley to face hundreds of Cloud ninjas in order to save him, and how he fought with Cloud Jinchuriki in the country of hot water for the sake of the village, Kakashi felt that Hyojin would never betray the village. Even if the root ninja in the photo was really killed by Hyojin, he deserved to die. As soon as Jisue saw the iron sand mentioned in the document, He guessed that the root ninja must have been killed by Hyojin, because he saw Hyojin controlling the Kazekage puppets of 3 generations. But he had promised Hyojin that no matter what Hyojin did with Danzo, he must keep it a secret, so he didn't say anything to the 3 generations. Danzo, who was sitting on the side, snorted coldly, expressing his dissatisfaction. 3 generations sighed and said, Hyojin is partly responsible for Uchiha's death. I announce that he will be suspended from his position in the Umbu. Kakashi said calmly, Naruto-sama, Hyojin is my team member. If he is responsible, then, as the captain, am I also responsible? Danzo said coldly, last time, your team, 11 concealed the truth, and this time your team, 11 members are suspected of assassinating a ninja from the same village. I suggest that all members of team 11 be suspended from their positions in the Umbu. In order to appease Danzo, 3 generations nodded. All members of team 11 will be suspended from their positions in the Umbu. Chapter 91. After the 3 members of the team 11 left Naruto's office, the Danzo leaned on a stick. 9 swallows? Hanjia Kajimono? Wolf? Kajimono? Now you pal. Kajimono? Sheathed Kajimono? Play? 3 generations shook his head. Things are not irreparable yet. Have you considered what kind of losses the village will suffer if they make the first move? After a slight pause, Danzo continued, Leave it to me. I will minimize the losses. Sandaime took a puff of the cigarette in his mouth. Isn't the lesson from the Hidden Mist Rebellion enough? I will be responsible for Uchiha's affairs from now on. You don't need to interfere anymore. Hearing 3 generations mention the turmoil of the Mist Village, Danzo was speechless for a while. The turmoil of the Mist Village almost destroyed the Mist Village's reputation as one of the 5 great shinobi villages. Not only did the village suffer a great loss in strength, but even the country of water fell into turmoil. Therefore, everyone knows that such a tragedy must not happen in Mai. After thinking for a while, Danzo added, Uchiha Jishue cannot be allowed to stay in the Umbu any longer. His strength is no longer below yours or mine. If he completely falls to Uchiha's side, you will be in great danger. Hokage-sama nodded. The reason why 3 generations readily agreed to Danzo's proposal and suspended all the members of Team 11 is also because of their fear of Jishue. Because Jishue helped Hyojin recognize the results of the battle in the valley, 3 generations and Danzo both overestimated Jishue's combat power. Coupled with Jishue's Manjikyu Sharingan and Kodo Ematsukami, the threat of Jishue suddenly increased by several levels. At this point, whether it was the 3 generations or the Danzo, none of them had the confidence to defeat Jishue in a one-on-one match. Naruto's Black Ops had the right to enter and exit the Naruto building freely. Therefore, if Jishue had any ill intentions, the 3 generations would likely suffer a fatal sneak attack when they were unprepared. Although the 3 generations did not think that Jishue would betray the village, as Naruto, he could not take the risk. A week later, Hyojin returned to the village before his 2-month holiday expired. When he returned to the village, he found out that he had been suspended. However, he was not surprised by this. Moreover, for him, the position in the Black Operation was dispensable. In fact, from the very beginning, he didn't have any plans to continue looking forward to this in the dark. Even if the 3 generations didn't suspend his position, he would find a suitable opportunity to resign from the Black Operation. Because of the Uzumaki's sealing technique, the internal layout of the Naruto building, the details of the guards in the confidential database, and the information of the members of the Black Operation, etc., he has already obtained them one by one. Even on his resume, his file has been added to the Umbu, which is directly under Naruto, so there is no need to continue to stay in the Black Operation. It must be known that although the Umbu has many privileges, they are also subject to many restrictions. For example, ordinary ninjas, as long as they are not assigned by the village, they can accept any task at the mission center and then naturally go out to carry out the task. But the Umbu can't because the tasks of the Umbu are assigned by Naruto, and their every move is subject to Naruto's restrictions. Wherever they go, what they do, all have to be reported to Naruto. This may not be important for ordinary mind ninjas, but for Hyojin, it is very troublesome. So the status of Umbu has more disadvantages than advantages for him. But why did they suspend the entire team? 11? Thinking of this, Hyojin faintly felt that the Konoha's higher-ups may not be targeting him. They may just be using the death of the root ninja as an excuse to target someone in Team 11. And this person is undoubtedly Jishuei. After pondering for a while, Hyojin put these thoughts aside. As long as the peace talks between the Konoha and Kyumo village are not finalized, nothing will happen to Uchiha. So what Hyojin needs to do now is not to cause trouble everywhere, but to improve his strength while others are not paying attention to him. In the shinobi world, in the final analysis, strength speaks the loudest. In the next few days, Hyojin met with the 3 members of Team 11 and walked around the village to let everyone know that he has returned to the village. Then he stayed at home and didn't go anywhere. The Danzo didn't send anyone to monitor him these days, and he didn't bother to find out why. On the 7th day after returning to the village, Kuroto officially started the artificial tailed beast plan. First of all, he needs to make a shell for his artificial tailed beast. The material for the shell is the purple clay recorded in the scroll of the artificial tailed beast. These days, Kuroto has done several experiments in private and found that the purple clay is indeed a material that has a strong isolation ability against chakra, so it is very suitable to make the shell of the artificial tailed beast. As for the technique, Kuroto has already memorized the technique recorded in the scroll of the artificial tailed beast, so the probability of a problem occurring is close to 0. Byakugan open. Glancing around the house again to confirm that no one is spying on him, Hyojin took out the scroll containing the purple clay and took out all the purple clay sealed in it. Looking at the pile of purple clay in front of him, Kuroto thought for a while and decided to shape the body of the artificial tailed beast into a simple round shape. Choosing a round shape is not because he wants it to be simple, but because the simpler the shape, the more stable the structure will be. After all, the artificial tailed beast is just like a battery for him. If he makes the shape too flashy and reduces the stability of the artificial tailed beast, it would be a waste of time. Having made up his mind, Kuroto started to engrave the technique on the purple clay bit by bit. Engraving the technique must be done in one go. Neither can it be paused halfway, nor can there be any mistakes. Otherwise, there will be obvious flaws in the artificial tailed beast body and it will become unstable. In the worst case, the artificial tailed beast body will directly explode when it contains the chakra source. Because this process is crucial when engraving the technique, Hyojin directly opened the Tenseigan. Through the unparalleled insight of the Tenseigan, he carefully controls his chakra and increases the precision of the engraving technique to the highest level. When people focus on something, time always passes quickly. Glancing at the morning light outside the window, Hyojin closed the Tenseigan. After a sleepless night of engraving the technique, Kuroto finally completed the shaping of the artificial tailed beast body. Fortunately, he chose a simple round shape. Otherwise, even with the help of the Tenseigan, a single night is not enough for him to complete such a large workload. Chapter 92. After resting for 2 days, Hyojin fully recovered his spirit. It can be seen that it is not an easy task to write the technique overnight. The body of the artificial tailed beast has now been shaped. The next problem in front of Hyojin is how to sneak out of the village quietly. If it is just sneaking out of the village, it is not difficult for Hyojin as an Umbu. But the key problem is that this trip will not be able to return in a day or 2. After all, Mai is thousands of miles away from the Rorin ruins. It will take a lot of time to travel on the road, so Hyojin must leave a shadow clone at home to deal with any possible trouble. But more than half of the chakra on his body has been consumed to maintain the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets. The remaining chakra, if it is divided into 2 and leaves a shadow clone, then the chakra of his main body will not be enough to break the seal imposed on the dragon vein by 4 generations. Therefore, after thinking about it, Hyojin invited Jishui to his home. Jishui asked curiously, "Kuroto-san, why did you ask me to come here?" Hyojin nodded. "There is indeed one thing I want to ask you, but before that, I have another thing to ask you." "What is it?" "Didn't I mention to you before that during the Nine Tails Rebellion, the Nine Tails were controlled by the Sharingan?" After a pause, Hyojin thought about the wording and then asked, "Recently, have you found any strange people near the Uchiha clan land?" Shursui thought about it seriously, then shook his head. Hyojin asked, "Is there any abnormality?" Jishui smiled helplessly and said, "Except for those root ninjas who monitor our Uchiha clan, there are no suspicious people near the clan land. The Uchiha clan's land is on the edge of the village, and after the Kyuubi's rebellion, the estrangement between the Uchiha clan and the village has deepened, so ordinary villagers don't approach the Uchiha clan's land at all." Jishui suddenly stopped, and there was a thoughtful expression on her face. "What are you thinking of?" Jishui said with some uncertainty. "Speaking of which, something strange did happen in the clan." Hyojin asked curiously, "What strange thing?" "You should remember Shinichi, right?" While thinking, Shursui said, "Recently, he has been a little strange. Every day, he would run outside the village to cultivate." Hyojin rubbed his chin and said, "That's not strange, is it?" He didn't have a deep impression of Uchiha Shinichi. After all, when they sparred, he cheated and defeated Uchiha Shinichi in an instant. The process was too fast, so naturally, it didn't leave any impression. Shursui said with a worried look on his face, "It's all because the root ninja who was monitoring him disappeared for no reason. In the past few days, Danzano-sama has been arguing with the patriarch about this matter. If it weren't for Sandame-sama, the consequences would have been, no wonder Danzo didn't send anyone to bother me these days." Before, Hyojin was a little puzzled as to why Danzo didn't send anyone to monitor him again. Hearing Jishui's words, he knew that something happened to the root ninjas again. However, since Danzo didn't do anything to Uchiha Shinichi, it meant that the disappearance of the root ninjas had nothing to do with Uchiha Shinichi, or in other words, there was no evidence to prove that Uchiha Shinichi did it. Hyojin couldn't analyze anything from Jishui's words, but he kept it in mind. After learning about the current situation of the Uchiha clan, Hyojin changed the topic and said, "Jishui, I have a favor to ask of you." Jishui hurriedly said, "Kuroto-san, you are too polite. Please tell me what you need." Hyojin said with a serious face, "I need to go out of the village to do something, but I don't want others to know about it, so I hope you can help me create a shadow clone and leave it in my house to cover for me." The reason why Hyojin looked for Jishui is that only Jishui, who has the Manjikyu Sharingan, can perfectly transform her shadow clone into Hyojin's appearance. Even in front of the three generations, there is still a possibility of passing it off as the real one. After listening to Kuroto-san, Jishui was surprised. "Kuroto-san, what are you going to do?" Hyojin said, "Don't worry. What I'm going to do has nothing to do with the village, and it won't harm the interests of the village. It's just a personal matter." Hyojin knows what Jishui is worried about, so he has to explain it clearly. Because Jishui is the kind of my ninja who would rather commit suicide than defect after being betrayed by the village's elders. So if he doesn't explain it clearly to Jishui, even if the two have a good personal relationship, Jishui may not help him. After hesitating for a moment, Jishui finally nodded and agreed. "If that's the case, then okay." Hyojin smiled. "I'm afraid you have to work hard this time, because I won't be able to come back in a short time." Jishui asked carefully, "Kuroto-san, how many days will it take for you to come back?" After thinking for a while, Hyojin said, "If everything goes well, I can come back in half a month, but if there's an accident, then I can't say." Jishui suddenly stood up. "What?" Even for Jishui, it is not easy to maintain a shadow clone for half a month. What's more, in this half a month, it is very likely that the three generations will summon class 11, and Jishui really does not have the guts to use a shadow clone to deceive the three generations. Hyojin patted Jishui on the shoulder and sat him down, then said with a smile, You just promised me. You can't go back on your word now. Jishui said, but Hyojin interrupted Jishui's complaint and said, don't worry, you have helped me this time. I will do my best to help you solve the conflict between Uchiha and the village. Jishui, who was a little moved, bowed his head and thought for a moment, then said, Kuroto-san, I can only hold on for 20 days at most. If it is longer, I can't guarantee. Hyojin secretly said, 20 days should be enough. Although the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets have been lost, Hyojin can still fly with the Tenseigan chakra mode, and the flying speed of the Tenseigan chakra mode is far better than the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets. After the 2 people reached an agreement, before leaving, Jishui left a shadow clone that is almost identical to Hyojin. With the cover of the shadow clone, Hyojin did not delay and directly sneaked out of the village. Before traveling, he had already investigated a remote and uninhabited route. So after sneaking out of the village, he immediately entered the Tenseigan chakra mode and flew towards the direction of the Land of Wind. Chapter 93. Country of Wind. The wind rolled up the yellow sand all over the sky, like a curtain covering the sun hanging in the sky, making the noon sun look like the sunset at dusk. Walking on the winding sand dunes, the handsome face under the scorpion cloak was gloomy, as if it could drip water. He patrolled the distance, and his eyebrows were slightly twisted. Did I miss him again? In the past 10 days, he searched the major towns, black markets, and even several oases on the trade route in the Country of Wind, but he found nothing. The trace of Hyojin seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Since he found out the identity of Hyojin, Sasori has been planning revenge. However, Hyojin is a member of the My Black Ops, which is directly under Naruto. His whereabouts are unpredictable. Either he doesn't leave the village, or once he leaves the village, he must be performing a secret mission, so it has been difficult for him to grasp the whereabouts of Hyojin. This time, he finally got a tip from a black market informant and thought that he would be able to wash away his shame. He never thought that after traveling thousands of miles from the country of water to the country of wind, he would still end up empty-handed. You're lucky. After a cold snort, Sasori wrapped his cloak tighter and walked in the direction of the country of rain, in the country of fire, in a forest. Hyojin fell from the air and exited the Tenseigan chakra mode, holding a big tree and gasping for breath. Because he has to maintain the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets in the Country of Wind, there's only a small part of chakra left in his body, which leads to the Tenseigan chakra mode that can normally be maintained for 10 minutes, but now it can only be maintained for 4 or 5 minutes. Therefore, every time he activates the Tenseigan chakra mode, he has to stop for a while. Fortunately, the flying speed in the Tenseigan chakra mode is very fast. Otherwise, it may not be as fast as his normal speed. After chewing a military food pill, Hyojin spread the map on the ground and looked at it carefully. From the time he sneaked out of the village until now, 2 days had passed. According to the plan, he would be able to pass through the forest and enter the territory of the river country in 1 day. The main reason why he took so long was that the route he chose was too remote. The entire journey was either a dense forest that stretched as far as the eye could see, or an unbroken chain of mountains. There was also a section in the middle that was filled with cliffs and swamps. Choosing this secluded route was actually an act of helplessness. The main reason is that the Tenseigan chakra mode is too eye-catching. If he takes other routes, it will be easy to be discovered by the perception-type ninjas and my sentry posts scattered throughout the Land of Fire. A few days later, Hyojin finally passed through the country of river and entered the country of wind, which was full of wind and sand. Instead of rushing, he perceived the position of the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets. A moment later, he opened his eyes and frowned. So far, after a while, he found that the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets that were following the Roaring survivors were about 200 kilometers away from his position. Spreading out the map again, Kuroto drew a small point on the map with a pen. The location of this point is the location of the Roaring survivors. Then, With this point as the center, his eyes swept around the map and finally fell on an oasis called Manto. Drawing a circle on this oasis with a pen, Kurodo thought, "The place they're going should be here." This oasis, called Manto, is a relatively large oasis in the country of wind. Analyzing the trajectory of the Roran survivors' activities, this is likely to be their next foothold. Therefore, Hyojin doesn't have to chase the Roran survivors' convoy. He can just wait for them in the Manto oasis. After making up his mind, Kurodo immediately put away the map and entered the Tenseigan chakra mode again, flying in the direction of the Manto oasis at a high altitude, close to the ground. 2 days later, Hyojin finally arrived at the Manto oasis and successfully saw the Roran survivors' convoy. He was not in a hurry to see Queen Roran, but first put the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets into the scroll and restored his peak state. Then he changed into a black cloak and put on a mask that he bought in the town of the country of wind before, and finally waited quietly for the night to come. A few hours later, the sun set and the moon slowly climbed up. At this time, smoke rose from the Roran survivors' convoy. They sat together in 2s and 3s, enjoying the rare leisure time of the day. Queen Roran did not sit around to eat with others, but held the baby alone, humming a song in the tent. Under the cover of the night, Hyojin quietly sneaked into Queen Roran's tent and whispered to Queen Roran, "What are you thinking about?" Queen Roran was shocked when she heard the voice. She quickly hugged the child in her arms and retreated to the corner while looking at Tenseigan with vigilance. "Who are you?" Hyojin said lightly. "Don't be too nervous. I'm here to do business with you." Queen Roran was a little confused. Business? In the convoy of the Roran survivors, except for some livestock, there was nothing valuable, so Queen Roran did not relax her vigilance because of Hyojin's words. At the same time, she did not call for help, because she knew very well that the person who can sneak in her tent quietly must be a ninja. And if the enemy is a ninja, the Roran survivors outside can't help at all. Her call for help not only won't save herself, but will also harm others. Hyojin nodded. "Yes, business." Queen Roran wanted to say something, but because of nervousness and panic, she coughed continuously and only managed to stop after a long time. Seeing that Queen Roran coughed up blood, Hyojin quietly activated Byakugan and scanned Queen Roran. He was surprised to find that the chi in Queen Roran's body was stagnant, and her blood vessels were blocked, as if she was seriously ill. Hyojin frowned. "You are very ill." After panting for a while, Queen Roran said weakly, I know." Looking around Queen Roran's shabby tent, Hyojin said, "If you don't get treated in time, I'm afraid you won't live for more than a few years." Queen Roran did not continue this topic, but asked with a serious face, "Who are you? What do you want?" "I told you. I'm here to do business with you." Queen Roran shook her head. "I have nothing to sell." "No, you have a priceless treasure." After a short pause, Tenseigan continued with a smile. "However, for you and your people, it is really useless." Chapter 94. Hyojin didn't deny it. He said in a cold voice, "Yes, I want to do business with you, the dragon vein." "No, never." Queen Lulon refused without hesitation. Hyojin didn't ask a stupid question like why, but said coldly, "You don't have the right to refuse." Queen Lulon heard the threat in Hyojin's words, but she wasn't afraid. Instead, she straightened her chest and said, "You don't understand what the dragon vein's power means. It's not something you can control. Please put away your ambition." Hyojin shook his head and said, "You're the one who doesn't understand the situation. I said you don't have the right to refuse." Queen Lulon turned her head to the side and became silent. She seemed to want to use this method to fight against Hyojin. "Listen to the voices outside. Your people are living a hard life in the desert to follow you." After a pause, Hyojin's voice became colder. "Do you really have the heart to watch them die one by one in front of you?" Wearing a black robe, coupled with a scary grimace mask, Kurodo's appearance makes his words more convincing. Queen Lulon's face turned pale. She opened her mouth a few times but didn't know what to say. At this time, a survivor came to the queen's tent and shouted, "Your Highness, the soup is ready. Do you want me to bring it in?" Inside the tent, Tenseigan silently took out a kunai. Queen Lolan's heart jumped to her throat when she saw the cold kunai in Tenseigan's hand. She quickly said, "No need, I'm not hungry." The survivor said, "If you're hungry, you can call me at any time." Queen Lulan let out a long sigh of relief when she heard the survivor's footsteps leaving. Tenseigan asked, "Have you thought it through?" Queen Lulan compromised and said, "I can't break the seal. There's no point in forcing me. You don't have to worry about the seal. You just need to help me control the dragon vein." After a pause, Tenseigan continued, "After this is over, I'll pay you a large sum of money. It should be enough for you and your people to improve their lives. Compared to the useless dragon vein, money is what you need the most right now." Queen Lulan gently placed the baby on the bed and said, "I'll go with you, but you have to promise not to hurt my people." Queen Roran didn't believe that Tenseigan would give her the money after he stole the dragon vein. In her opinion, once Tenseigan stole the dragon vein, the first thing he would do would be to silence all witnesses. But she had no choice. In order to protect her daughter and her people, she decided to sacrifice herself. Plus, she knew she was already seriously ill and didn't have much time. Tenseigan didn't give her any guarantees. He left the caravan with her and disappeared into the night in a few leaps. The Manto Oasis wasn't far from the Lulan ruins. After a few hours of walking, Tenseigan and Queen Lulan arrived at the ruins. Returning to the ruins, Queen Lulan silently shed tears. This was where she was born and raised. It was also the hometown she'd abandoned. Tenseigan stood quietly at the side and didn't urge Queen Roran, who was in a state of sadness. To Tenseigan, the decline of ancient Lulan was inevitable. As the saying went, treasures bring trouble. Ancient Lulan didn't have the power to control the dragon vein. Naturally, it would attract all kinds of ambitious people. A moment later, the two arrived at the place where 4 generations had sealed the dragon vein. Queen Lulan pointed at the seal on the ground. "The seal here was personally cast by 4 generations Naruto from my village. If you can't break the seal, I can't help you." Tenseigan didn't waste time. He slowly walked to the center of the seal and shouted, "Break!" Following Tenseigan's shout, the sealing technique of the dragon vein seal that Yondaime Sama placed on the dragon vein quickly disappeared, and the entire dragon vein seal shrank by a large margin. Queen Lulan was shocked. I can feel the dragon vein. Of course, I have removed the contract seal in the dragon vein, so the connection between you and the dragon vein should have been restored." After explaining indifferently, Kuroto asked, "What is the current situation of the dragon vein?" Queen Lulan sensed it and said, "It seems very irritable." Tenseigan glanced at Queen Lulan. "Irritable?" Queen Lulan hurriedly advised, "You should give up. The power of the dragon vein can't be possessed by anyone. If you continue to remove the seal, I'm afraid something bad will happen." Tenseigan smiled. "We've already come this far. Do you think I'll stop?" Queen Lulan shook her head and sighed. "You don't understand how terrifying the power of the dragon vein is." Tenseigan continued to make seals coldly and shouted again, "Break!" This time, what he unlocked was the core of the Rimyaka seal. And as the core part of the Rimyaka seal was unlocked, the entire Rimyaka seal was on the verge of collapse. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. All of a sudden, a strong gust of wind blew in the surroundings, emitting a series of whistling sounds. Looking at the crumbling dragon vein seal, Tenseigan slightly raised the corner of his mouth. This was why he was confident that he could break the seal on the 4th generation sage. He didn't need to completely break the seal. He only needed to make a small hole in the seal, and the sealed dragon vein would struggle to break free from the shackles of the seal. At this time, he opened the scroll that sealed the body of the artificial tailed beast and pressed it lightly. Bang! After a burst of mist dissipated, a large mass of purple clay filled with exquisite sealing techniques appeared in front of Tenseigan and Queen Lulan. Queen Lulan looked at the large mass of purple clay on the ground like a deflated balloon and asked, "What is this?" Tenseigan, who was wearing the devil mask, activated the Tenseigan and said calmly, You don't have to worry about what this is when the dragon vein breaks free. Find a way to help me control it. Don't let it go berserk." Seeing that the seal of the 4 generations dragon Naruto was disintegrating little by little, Queen Lulon knew that no matter what she said at this moment, it would be useless, so she nodded. Hyojin fully activated the Tenseigan and stared at the dragon vein that was gradually breaking free. The existence of the dragon vein can be said to be an unsolved mystery in the shinobi world, because in the natural world, it is impossible to give birth to such a large chakra that is comparable to the tailed beast for no reason. In Hyojin's view, the only thing that can do this is either the ancestor of chakra, Otsutsuki Kagaya, who has been sealed for thousands of years, or her 2 sons, Otsutsuki Himura and Otsutsuki Yuki, or some kind of demon from another world, or some unknown evil god entrenched in the shinobi world. Chapter 95. Under the mask, Hyojin's Tenseigan shone brightly, as if he wanted to see through everything about the dragon vein. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Amidst the whistling sound, the hurricane became stronger and stronger. The surrounding gravel was blown up by the hurricane, like a tornado, spinning rapidly around the altar. No matter what it hit, it would make a deafening noise. The ground began to tremble. Amidst the tremors, cracks appeared on the brick ground, and these cracks spread rapidly in all directions. In a moment, the entire ground was cracked into pieces. Queen Lulon staggered a few steps and finally fell to the ground. The hurricane blew so hard that she could barely open her eyes. She covered her face with her hands and said with difficulty, "The dragon vein is getting more and more irritable. I can't control it at all." Hyojin flashed in front of Queen Lulon and said calmly, "Don't panic. It's trying to break free from the seal. It's inevitable for it to be a little irritable." Queen Lulon, who was being protected by Hyojin, struggled to get up, looking surprised and doubtful. "Why aren't you afraid at all?" The scene in front of her was like the end of the world. In such an environment, Queen Lulon felt that no one in the world would be able to remain calm, but Hyojin, who was in front of her, had been very calm. This made her doubt Hyojin's identity. In her opinion, in the ninja world, perhaps only those ninjas who carry the name Kage could face the dragon vein so calmly. At this time, there were not many sealing techniques left for the 4 generations dragon vein seal. Roar. When the last few sealing techniques collapsed one by one, a soul-stirring dragon roar came from the abyss under the altar. Hyojin's eyes turned cold. It's about to break free. Queen Lulon, who was hiding behind Hyojin, tightly grabbed onto Hyojin's robe and said with difficulty under the whistling hurricane, I can already feel it." Clang. At the same time that the last sealing technique collapsed, the flying thunder god Kanai, which was the cardinal of the dragon vein seal, also flew out of the altar. An enormous amount of chakra surged out of the abyss and smashed the dome of the altar. It turned into a pillar of chakra that soared into the sky and lit up the entire night sky. Hyojin frowned. In the vision of his Tenseigan, the chakra of the dragon vein is not only vigorous, but is also filled with an inexplicable power, which makes him feel a little afraid. At the same time, the commotion caused by the unsealing of the dragon vein had far exceeded his expectations. Looking at the dragon vein chakra pillar that pierced through the clouds, he knew that the Sand Crypsis would send someone to investigate soon, so he did not have much time left. Suppressing his guesses, Hyojin began the last step of the artificial tailed beast plan. Soon, as he rapidly formed a series of hand seals, the purple clay shell gradually swelled up and grew larger. Open. After instilling the guided chakra into the purple clay shell, Hyojin shouted in a low voice. Accompanied by his low shout, the seal of the purple clay shell flashed with a brilliance. Then, the seal, which was covered with sealing spells, slowly opened up like a big mouth that was open wide. Seeing this scene, Queen Lulon was so shocked that she could not speak. At this time, Hyojin formed another hand seal and then pressed one hand on the ground. In an instant, circles of sealing techniques spread out on the ground, like a spider web, covering the entire altar. This technique was the chakra seal, recorded in the artificial tailed beast scroll. According to Orochimaru's speculation, it was specially developed by the second Naruto for the artificial tailed beast plan. After taking a deep breath, Hyojin activated the chakra seal and shouted to Queen Lulon behind him, "Now is the time. Help me suppress the dragon vein." Queen Lulon looked up and saw the purple clay shell like a ball with its mouth wide open, pouncing on the dragon vein's chakra pillar. "It's devouring the dragon vein's chakra." Shocked, Queen Lulon fell into a dilemma. The dragon vein was the symbol of the ancient city of Lulon, a treasure passed down from generation to generation in the queen's family. She was not willing to watch the dragon vein be stolen. However, when she thought of the people who followed her, her heart was stirred again. The treasure of Lulon should belong to the people of Lulon. Gradually, Queen Lulon's expression became firm, and there was no more hesitation in her eyes. At this time, Hyojin was starting to feel tired. The amount of chakra in the dragon vein had completely exceeded his expectations. In just a few moments, the purple clay shell had expanded more than 10 times its original size. Its huge body even broke through the walls of the altar tower, causing the top half of the altar tower to collapse. Without the cover of the altar tower, the hurricane swept up a sandstorm that engulfed the entire Lulon ruins. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up," Hyojin urged. Queen Lulon no longer hesitated and shouted, "In the name of the queen, I command thee to suppress thy power." With Queen Lulon's words, the hurricane slowed down significantly, and the chakra pillar also shrunk. The situation seemed to be under control. "It's working." Secretly delighted, Hyojin quickly asked, "Can you suppress the dragon vein further?" Queen Lulon shook her head. "This is all I can do." "All right, keep a close eye on the dragon vein. Don't let anything happen to it again." After giving some instructions, Hyojin focused on activating the chakra seal. With Queen Lulon's reassurance, the dragon vein calmed down. This made it easier for Hyojin to steal the dragon vein's chakra. After all, it was much easier to subdue the gentle chakra than the violent chakra. Under Hyojin's control, the purple clay shell continued to devour the dragon vein's chakra. Its entire body expanded continuously, and gradually, it became so huge that it almost covered the sky. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 minutes had passed. The shell is reaching its limit. Looking at the purple clay shell that was about to expand to its limit, Hyojin's expression turned serious. Fortunately, the dragon vein's chakra pillar had become very weak. Even the hurricane around it had stopped. It seemed like the dragon vein was about to dry up. Queen Lulon's expression became melancholic. She could feel that the connection between her and the dragon vein was disappearing bit by bit. Whoosh, with the last gust of wind, the dragon vein's chakra pillar dissipated completely. Seeing that it was a success, Hyojin quickly formed a hand seal and shouted, "Seal." Chapter 96. Looking at the purple clay shell that blotted out the sky, gradually shrinking under the shackles of the seals, the corners of Kuroto's mouth unconsciously rose slightly. But after a while, the smile on his face froze. This was because as the purple clay shell shrank, its appearance gradually changed. No one expected that after the dragon vein chakra was condensed to a certain extent, it actually manifested its true form, and its form turned out to be a dragon. But the purple clay shell was molded by Hyojin into a regular circle. As a result, the internal shape and the external shape had a violent conflict. Under the internal pressure of the dragon shape, the originally circular purple clay shell was forcibly squeezed out into the shape of a dragon. But because the purple clay shell was originally circular, so under the conflict, the artificial tailed beast created by Hyojin became a short and thick purple dragon. At first glance, it looks quite cute. After seeing the newly created artificial tailed beast, Queen Lulon looked at Hyojin with a strange expression. She didn't expect that Hyojin, who was dressed like a cold killer, would have such an aesthetic. Being stared at by Queen Lulon with such a strange expression, Hyojin couldn't help but explain coldly, This is actually an accident. Queen Lulan turned her head to the side. Looking at her expression, it seems that she didn't believe Hyojin's explanation at all. Seal. Hyojin didn't continue to explain, but hurriedly sealed the artificial tailed beast into his body. This seal is only a temporary seal. He still can't transfer the artificial tailed beast chakra. Only after completing the true Jinchuriki fusion seal can he transfer the artificial tailed beast chakra. It's just that time is tight. The ninjas of the Sand Crypsis may arrive at any time, so the matter of the Jinchuriki fusion seal can be dealt with slowly after leaving this place. Finally, after scanning the surroundings with the Tenseigan and confirming that there were no traces left, Hyojin quickly left the ruins of Roran City with Queen Roran. A few hours later, when the first rays of dawn appeared on the horizon, Hyojin had already brought the Lulan Queen back to the vicinity of the Manto Oasis. Seeing that they were about to reach the Manto Oasis, Lulan Queen asked sternly, "You promised me that you would let my people go." Hyojin was taken aback. "I didn't say I was going to kill them." Upon hearing this, Lulan Queen's expression gradually softened. Then, she looked deeply in the direction of the Manto Oasis and mustered up her courage to say, Then do it." Hyojin crossed his arms in front of his chest, a puzzled look on his face. "What do you mean?" Lulan Queen asked carefully. "Didn't you want to kill me?" Hyojin was a little confused. "What did I say I was going to kill you?" Only now did he realize that Lulan Queen had never believed his word about spending money to buy the dragon vein. Instead, she scared herself half to death. Seeing that Hyojin really didn't seem to have the intention to kill her, Lulan Queen heaved a sigh of relief and asked doubtfully, "But I know your secret. Aren't you afraid that I will tell others?" "Do you know who I am?" Lulan Queen shook her head. "You don't even know who I am. Even if you tell others, it won't affect me." After a short pause, Kuroto said coldly, "Besides, you should know what will happen to you and your people if you say anything. What's more, you should know what will happen to you and your people." Lulan Queen quickly said, "I won't say anything." After pondering for a while, Hyojin said, "I'm afraid the Sand Crypsis won't let you go easily. You can't stay in the Wind Kingdom anymore." "What?" Lulan Queen was taken aback at first, but when she thought of the Sand Crypsis's plan for the dragon vein, she also understood that Hyojin's words are right. So she asked, "But where else can we go?" Hyojin rested his chin on his hand and thought about it. When it comes to safety, Mai is a good choice, but the identity of the Lulan survivors is too sensitive. Once they hide in Mai, the 3 generations will immediately send people to investigate them. After all, the dragon vein was personally sealed by the 4 generations. Now that the seal has been lifted, even the dragon vein has been taken away, the 3 generations will definitely not ignore it. Except for Mai, Hyojin thought about it for a while. There's really no place that is safe. Suddenly, a thought flashed in his mind. The Land of Rain. As the headquarters of the Akatsuki, the Land of Rain may be a dangerous place for the ninjas of other villages, but for ordinary civilians, it is a rare and peaceful place. Because of Pain's strength, there are very few ninjas in the Land of Rain. Coupled with Pain's closed policy, it is very difficult for ninjas from other villages to sneak into the core cities of the Land of Rain. So once the Lulan survivors enter the Land of Rain, whether it is the Sand Crypsis or Mai, it will not be easy to catch them. After all, in the original story, the Land of Rain is a place where even one of the Sannin Jiraiya was defeated. And the most important point is that Pain, who has the Rinnegan and focuses on collecting the 9-tailed beasts, will not covet the dragon vein at all. Hyojin told Lulan Queen his thoughts, and once again said that he will pay Lulan Queen a sum of money to buy the dragon vein as agreed. Knowing that Hyojin really wants to pay, Lulan Queen, who is used to being poor, swallowed her saliva and asked, "How much do you want to pay?" Hyojin thought for a moment and immediately stretched out 5 fingers. 5 million Ryo is all the money he has on him, of which 3 million Ryo is the money he saved little by little, and the remaining 2 million Ryo is the bounty he got from the 2 bounty ninjas who tried to assassinate him not long ago. Originally, it was 3 million Ryo, but 1,000,000 Ryo was used to hire Kusanagi shinobi. Staring at Hyojin's 5 fingers, Lulan Queen said to herself, 50,000 Ryo? Well, it's actually quite a lot. Hyojin shook his head speechlessly. Lulan Queen asked tentatively, is it 500,000 Ryo? Hyojin joked, it seems that you don't take the dragon vein too seriously. Lulan Queen couldn't contain her excitement and said in surprise, 5,000,000 Ryo? Hyojin nodded and said casually, although the money is not much, it is enough to improve the life of you and your people. If I give you more money, it will only harm you. Chapter 97. Since he has decided to pay the money, Hyojin can't stay out of the aftermath. Otherwise, if the Sand Crypsis intercepts the convoy and uses the lives of the survivors to threaten Queen Lulan, then it will be hard for Queen Lulan to keep her mouth shut. Although Queen Lulan doesn't know Hyojin's true identity, she has witnessed the whole process of the artificial tailed beast birth, so even if she only leaks the information to the Sand Crypsis, it will still be a hidden danger to Hyojin. Thinking of this, Hyojin immediately made up his mind and said to Queen Lulan, time is precious. You should move now. I will deal with the Sand Crypsis. After noticing the abnormality of the dragon vein, according to common sense, Sand Village would definitely send an elite team to the ruins of Roran City to investigate the situation. This process will take at least half a day to 2 days. It depends on the Sand Crypsis' reaction speed and how much they value the dragon vein. After finding out that the dragon vein has been stolen, they will send the news back to the village, and the village will issue a new order to gather people to search for the Lulan survivors. This series of messages will take at least 1 to 2 days. In other words, the Lulan survivors will have about 2 to 3 days to catch up. As long as they can grasp this 2 to 3 days, it is very likely that the Lulan survivors will successfully escape from the Country of Wind and enter the Country of Rain controlled by the Akatsuki. After all, the Country of Rain and the Country of Wind are neighbors. As long as they leave the Country of Wind, they will be safe. Queen Lulan naturally also realized that time is precious. She nodded and asked, you will escort us out of the Country of Wind, right? Hyojin lightly said, I can't give you any guarantee. If there is no accident, he will secretly cover the Roran survivors' convoy as they enter the Country of Rain. But if Yandame Kazakage personally leads a team to chase after the Roran survivors' convoy, then he can only protect himself. Queen Lulan silently nodded. Although she was a little disappointed, she understood that the more it is like this, the more it means that Hyojin has no intention to deceive her. Although the truth was sometimes hard to accept, it was still better than a lie. Queen Lulan no longer hesitated. She nodded at Hyojin and ran towards the oasis in the distance. After running for a dozen meters, she stopped and turned to Hyojin. I'm no longer the Lulan Queen. My name is Sala. After saying that, Sarah did not look back and ran all the way to the Lulan survivors' convoy. Hyojin, dressed in a black robe, stood quietly on the sand dune, watching her leave. Not long after, the caravan of Lulan survivors camped in Manto Oasis was ready to set off. Hyojin did not immediately follow the convoy. Instead, he shifted his gaze to the other side. Sand Crypsis has been arranging 2 ninjas to monitor the Lulan survivors' convoy. This point, Hyojin had already discovered when he was looking for the Lulan survivors' convoy with the Grass Ninja Squad. Therefore, in order to ensure that the Sand Crypsis will not find out the whereabouts of the Lulan survivors' convoy, he must first solve the 2 Sand Crypsis ninjas responsible for monitoring the Lulan survivors' convoy. Byakugan open. After opening the Byakugan, Hyojin glanced around and finally found 2 very weak chakra reactions in one direction. Judging from Chakra's reaction, the 2 Sand Crypsis ninjas responsible for monitoring the Lulan survivors' convoy should be ordinary genin, so he was too lazy to go there in person. He directly took out the 3 Generations Kazakage puppet and gave it an order to kill them. It didn't take long for the 3 Generations Kazakage puppet to easily kill the 2 Sand Crypsis genin in the distance. After dealing with this small hidden danger, Hyojin put away the 3 generations Kazekage puppet while wrapping his robe tightly and following the Lulan survivors' convoy from a distance. With leisure, Hyojin pondered about the dragon vein. Regarding the origin of the dragon vein, he vaguely has an answer. This dragon vein is not a natural product of the shinobi world. Or, to be more precise, it is not entirely a natural product of the shinobi world. The core part of the dragon vein, that is, the dragon vein source, should be the same as Otsutsuki Kagaya, which came from the outside world. However, unlike the Otsutsuki clan that plunder energy, this dragon vein source did not come to the shinobi world intentionally. Its arrival is more like an accident, and when it came to the shinobi world, it should have been seriously injured. The degree of injury is so heavy that it had to establish a contract with the local nobles in order to obtain the worship of the local nobles. This is the reason why the dragon vein has a contract relationship with the Lulan queen. After that, the dragon vein source began to dive into the ground, trying to recover itself by absorbing the power of the earth vein. However, in the process, the dragon vein source seemed to have some problems, or it was attacked, which caused its source to completely collapse. The trace of obsession it left behind, after thousands of years of nurturing, produced a new dragon vein origin, a brand new and ignorant dragon vein origin. This brand new dragon vein origin had forgotten everything in the past, so it stopped absorbing the energy of the earth veins and stayed in the underground of the ancient Lulan city. It would only occasionally respond to the calls of the Lulan queen's bloodline. Because of this, the Lulan queen was able to maintain this unequal contract relationship. Otherwise, with the size of the dragon vein, which is comparable to the chakra of the tailed beast, the ordinary people of the Lulan queen would not have the ability to maintain a contract relationship with it. As urgent as the law. Recalling the words of the Lulan queen, Sala, when she comforted the dragon vein, Hyojin's thoughts suddenly scattered. The sentence pattern of as urgent as the law did not match the ninja world. So when Sala said it, Hyojin's first reaction was surprise, very surprise. And this sentence pattern was undoubtedly made when the first dragon vein source signed the contract with the ancestors of the Lulan queen. So, from this sentence pattern, Hyojin could vaguely guess where the first dragon vein source came from. Collecting his scattered thoughts, Hyojin looked up at the sky and muttered to himself, "What is this world like?" Just as Hyojin was feeling emotional, the 4 generations of Kazekage in the Sand Crypsis received the news that the dragon vein was stolen. Staring at the information in his hand, the 4 generations of Kazekage's face turned ashen. He asked the 2 consulting elders beside him, "Could it be Mai?" Chiyo snorted coldly. The seal of the 4 generations Naruto is not that easy to break. Who else could steal the dragon vein so quickly other than Mai? Chapter 98. Outside the Mai village, Uchiha Shinichi took the lunchbox and ate it while mumbling, "Didn't I tell you earlier that you don't need to send me food? I have already prepared the military ration pills?" Kuroto asked, "Didn't I tell you a long time ago that you don't need to send me food?" The girl on the side smiled and said, "It's not good for the body to eat military food pills often." The girl was about 14 or 15 years old, with short hair, wearing a ninja outfit with the Uchiha clan emblem painted on it. She didn't look like an ordinary weak girl, but a serious ninja. Uchiha Shinichi, who was eating happily, didn't speak, just shook his head. After swallowing the rice ball in his mouth, he said, "It's not safe outside the village. Don't come back in the future." The girl frowned and asked, "Shinichi, there's a training ground in the clan's land. Why do you have to go outside the village to train?" Uchiha Shinichi coldly snorted, "I don't want to train with them." The them, in Uchiha Shinichi's words, were the clansmen who laughed at him for losing to Hyojin. In the eyes of the clansmen, Uchiha Shinichi, who couldn't even block one move from Hyojin, had lost the face of the Uchiha clan, so they laughed at Uchiha Shinichi unscrupulously. The girl said angrily, "When I go back today, I'll go find the patriarch and let him teach them a lesson." Feeling that his self-esteem was violated, Uchiha Shinichi suddenly said angrily, "Kurumi, I don't need you to mind my business. The girl named Kurumi felt wronged. She grabbed the bowl and chopsticks in Uchiha Shinichi's hand and said angrily, I don't need you to mind my business. In the distance, the masked man sat on a branch, looking at Uchiha Shinichi and Uchiha Kurumi from afar. At this time, Zetsu's body rose from the trunk and said, I've prepared everything you arranged. The masked man said coldly, Then let's start. Zetsu also looked at Uchiha Shinichi and asked with a strange expression, Will this method really work? The masked man glanced at Zetsu coldly. What do you think? Zetsu smiled awkwardly. Maybe. On Uchiha Shinichi's side, after putting the bowl and chopsticks in a basket, Uchiha Kurumi ignored Shinichi and walked towards the village with the basket in her hand. Shinichi Uchiha opened his mouth and wanted to say, Be careful on the road, but he couldn't bring himself to do it, so he lowered his head and sighed. After leaving the training ground that Uchiha Shinichi had opened, Kurumi Uchiha sulked and thought about how to complain to the clan leader, so that the clan leader could teach those who bullied Uchiha Shinichi a lesson. At this time, Kurumi Uchiha suddenly stopped, and the bamboo basket in her hand fell to the ground, making a soft sound. As a ninja of the Uchiha clan, Kurumi Uchiha naturally understood that she was attacked. Thinking that Uchiha Shinichi was nearby, she quickly wanted to call for help, but when she opened her mouth, she realized that no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't make a sound. How could this be? Kurumi Uchiha suddenly panicked. At this moment, she felt that something had attached itself to her body and was slowly controlling her body. In the bushes, the root ninja who was in charge of monitoring Uchiha Shinichi also noticed the abnormality of Kurumi Uchiha. He frowned slightly and thought to himself, What's wrong with her? Before the root ninja could observe carefully, the frozen Kurumi Uchiha suddenly moved and she flew in his direction. Because of the mysterious disappearance of his predecessor, the root ninja, who took over monitoring Uchiha Shinichi, had to be vigilant at all times to avoid repeating the same mistake. So when Kurumi Uchiha rushed toward him, he didn't panic at all. He directly took out his kunai and faced her while shouting, Do you want to betray my? Kurumi Uchiha's eyes were full of panic, but her movements were clean and neat. In just an instant, she shot more than a dozen shurikens at the root ninja. Clang, clang, clang. After using his kunai to block the shuriken shot by Kurumi Uchiha, the root ninja was even more confused. As a shinobi of the root, Kuroto has heard of all kinds of strange ninjutsu. So when he noticed the panic in Uchiha Kurumi's eyes, he immediately realized that this matter isn't as simple as it seems. So he asked, Hey, what's wrong with you? Kurumi Uchiha's tears flowed out, but she couldn't speak, and her body was not under her control, so she couldn't explain at all. She could only attack the root ninja fiercely like a puppet. The root ninja weighed the situation and decided to retreat for the time being. After all, the scene in front of him was too strange, and he didn't know how to deal with it, and he suspected that there was an enemy hidden in the dark controlling everything. But just as he was about to retreat, he suddenly couldn't move. At the moment when he lost control of his body, the root ninja's heart was filled with a storm. At this time, Kurumi Uchiha had already rushed over, and her body directly hit the kunai in the root ninja's hand. Puff! As the kunai pierced into the chest, Kurumi Uchiha's blood suddenly sprayed out. Hearing the movement, Shinichi Uchiha also rushed over at this time. When he saw the scene in front of him, his face turned red, and he roared angrily, What are you doing? After stabbing Kurumi Uchiha, the root ninja found that he had regained control of his body, and his heart trembled, knowing that he had fallen into a trap, so he didn't explain to the angry Uchiha Shinichi and directly ran towards the village. Shinichi Uchiha stumbled to the front of Kurumi Uchiha, hugged her, and shouted, Kurumi, are you okay? Kurumi Uchiha, who was dying, mustered the last of her strength and reached out to the cheek of Shinichi Uchiha and said weakly, Shinichi, be careful. Before he could finish his words, Uchiha Kurumi's hand fell to the ground. No, no, no. Shinichi Uchiha tightly covered the wound of Kurumi Uchiha while shouting at the top of his voice. He had completely lost his mind, and he didn't even notice that the 3 Magatama on his Sharingan were spinning rapidly in the distance. Zetsu asked curiously, "How do you know that he has the potential? His strength is not the top in the Uchiha clan, is it?" The masked man thought for a long time and said, "It has nothing to do with strength. The purer the mind of the Uchiha, the more potential he has to open his eyes, whether it is pure good or pure evil." As he said that, the masked man fell into memory. He didn't know whether he should be pure good or pure evil. Chapter 99. After a sorrowful roar, the rotation speed of the 3 Tomo in Shinichi Uchiha's Sharingan gradually slowed down, and tears poured down from his eyes and fell on the corpse of Kurumi Uchiha. Zetsu, who was hiding in the distance, said with some regret, "It's a pity that it didn't work." The masked man was not disappointed. "Don't worry." Zetsu looked at the masked man in despair. "But your plan has failed. This is just the beginning." With a chuckle, the masked man said slowly, "Do you think Shinichi Uchiha will let go of the root ninja?" Zetsu shook his head. "This is an obvious fact. No matter who encounters such a thing, they won't let it go. Not to mention Uchiha Shinichi, who has a straightforward temperament and doesn't mince his words." The masked man smiled again and said, "Then do you think Danzo will hand over the root ninja?" Zetsu was taken aback. With Danzo's strength in Konoha, not to mention that the root shinobi is not responsible for this matter. Even if the root shinobi was really the one who killed the person, Danzo will never bow his head to the Uchiha clan. "No wonder you want me to let go of the root ninja," Zetsu asked worriedly. "But in this way, will Danzo be aware of us?" The masked man said indifferently, "They have been aware of us for a long time." In the Nine Tails Rebellion, the masked man fought with the 4 generations Naruto, leaving many traces of the fight, so the village leaders have long been aware that someone is manipulating the chaos behind the scenes. It's just that the village leaders can't confirm whether the person behind the scenes is from outside the village or is hidden within the Uchiha clan. As for Danzo, he has long made no secret of his malice toward the Uchiha clan, so most of the time he just pretends to be confused and deliberately finds excuses to target the Uchiha clan. Zetsu asked again, "Then what are we going to do next?" "Let's wait and watch the show." With a smile, the masked man said mockingly, "Uchiha Shinichi won't be able to take revenge, and the Uchiha clan won't be able to help him either." Ju asked, "Then what will he do?" "He'll hate Danzo. She hate him. I hate Uchiha. I hate everything." The masked man spoke with certainty, as if he had already predicted the future. With despair in his eyes, Shinichi Uchiha, who was walking towards the village with Kurumi's body in his arms, said casually, "But what if he can't open the Manjikyu Sharingan? I think we've wasted too much time here." The masked man also looked at the back of Uchiha and Shinichi as they left and mumbled, "A useful chess piece. It's worth the effort." Wind Nation. In the endless desert, Hyojin walked while silently counting the distance. It has been 10 days since he sneaked out of the village. He estimates that in 3 days he will be able to successfully escort the Rorin survivors to the territory of the Land of Rain, and then the remaining 7 days should be enough for him to return to the village. Fortunately, the agreed time with Ji Shui is 20 days. Just as he was rejoicing, the cry of an eagle suddenly sounded in the distance. Following the sound, Kuroto saw an eagle hovering in the sky in the distance. Looking at its flight trajectory, it seems to be searching for something. Obviously, the eagle in the sky is not an ordinary bird, but a trained ninja beast. With a smile, Hyojin said, as expected of one of the 5 great ninja villages, San Cripsis, their reaction speed is really not slow. They found this place so quickly. After laughing, Kuroto didn't do anything extra, but stood quietly in the same place, as if waiting for someone. After a while, a figure fell in front of Hyojin, knelt on one knee, and said in a cold and mechanical tone, "Master, there's a 4-man team of San Cripsis behind us." This figure is none other than the Kazekage puppet of 3 generations. In the past few days, Kuroda took advantage of the time he had to protect the Rorin survivors' convoy to redo the Jinchuriki fusion ceremony on the artificial tailed beast that was temporarily sealed inside his body, thus becoming a true Jinchuriki of the dragon bloodline. And after becoming Ryumyaku's Jinchuriki, he deeply realized that there is a big difference between Ryumyaku's chakra and ordinary chakra. First of all, Ryumyaku's chakra contains a large proportion of earth vein energy, that is, nature energy, so the quality of a chakra is obviously higher than the chakra in the body of an ordinary ninja. This caused the Tenseigan chakra in Hyojin's body to be unable to instantly fuse with Ryumyaku's chakra of the same quality. Therefore, whenever Hyojin wants to mobilize Ryumyaku's chakra, he needs to spend some time to transform Ryumyaku's chakra into Tenseigan chakra bit by bit in his body, just like Naruto absorbs nature energy. However, it is precisely because the quality of Ryumyaku's chakra is very high, so the amount of Tenseigan chakra obtained after the transformation is very large. Secondly, Hyojin was surprised to find that perhaps because the original intention of Ryumyaku's original source is to absorb the energy of the earth vein to restore itself, so in thousands of years of gestation, Ryumyaku's chakra has a natural self-healing attribute. Ordinary wounds, even without medical ninjutsu, or even without bandaging, can heal at a speed several times faster than normal. Finally, because the second generation Ryumyaku's original source is essentially a newborn, ignorant, and much smaller than a tailed beast, it is very easy to tame, so Hyojin can easily control it. But the amount of Ryumyaku's chakra is too large, so he has to be careful every time he mobilizes Ryumyaku's chakra. After obtaining a huge amount of Tenseigan chakra, the first thing Hyojin did was to pour a huge amount of Tenseigan chakra into the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets around him. Originally, he just wanted to try to improve the spirituality of the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets so that they have a little consciousness. But he never thought that after pouring a large amount of Tenseigan chakra into the puppets, the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets not only have a certain degree of autonomous consciousness, but they can even speak. Hyojin has studied the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets for a long time, and he knows that there is no vocal device in its throat at all, so Hyojin is also very surprised that it can speak. But when he opened the Tenseigan and carefully observed for a while, he found that the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets simulated part of the vocal organ by using chakra. So although it can speak, its tone is very cold and mechanical. That feeling is like a ghost that has come back to life and is speaking. Chapter 100. A 4-man team, huh? After knowing that behind him was a 4-man team from the San Crypsis, Hyojin rubbed his chin, pondered for a while, and finally decided to deal with this trouble personally. After all, the convoy of the Rorin survivors was still 2 or 3 days away from the country of rain. If the trail of the convoy was exposed now, the subsequent troubles would be endless. One must know that the speed of the ninjas was far beyond the speed of the convoy. After making up his mind, Hyojin ordered the 3 generations Kazekage puppets. You go follow the convoy. Yes. The 3 generations Kazekage puppets responded, and then disappeared in front of Hyojin in a flash. Hyojin curled his lips. This guy, is it necessary to use body flicker technique? Suddenly, he felt that it was necessary to set a rule with the 3 generations Kazekage puppets. Being so extravagant and wasteful, even if he was the Ryumai's Jinchuriki, he also faintly felt distressed. What's more, transforming the Ryumai chakra into the Tenseigan chakra was not an easy task. He himself had worked hard and hadn't used the chakra much, and the 3 generations Kazekage puppets were not polite at all. After activating the Byakugan to confirm the location of the 4-man San Crypsis team, Hyojin's figure flashed and rushed over. After a few jumps, Hyojin came to the front of the 4-man San Crypsis team. The San Crypsis ninjas saw Hyojin dressed in a black robe and wearing a grimace mask on his face, almost writing the word suspicious on his face, so they didn't talk nonsense and spread out to surround Hyojin while sending a signal to the distance. Hyojin did not stop them and let the other side send the signal for help. The Sand Crypsis' search was obviously a comprehensive search of different areas. If he killed the 4 members of the Sand Crypsis team here, it would be telling the Sand Crypsis that there was a problem in this direction. Therefore, what he really wanted to do was not to annihilate a team of 4 from the Sand Crypsis, but to disrupt the Sand Crypsis' search plan and confuse the Sand Crypsis' search direction. After a while, another 2 teams of 4 from the Sand Crypsis arrived. The Sand Jonin who was leading the team asked sternly while remaining vigilant, "Who are you? Why are you here?" Seeing that the surrounding Sand Crypsis ninjas have been attracted, Hyojin no longer delayed and directly ran over several sand dunes in the blink of an eye. Seeing that Hyojin was so suspicious, the Sand Crypsis ninjas will naturally not let him go. Therefore, the scene became that Hyojin was running in the front, and a large group of Sand Crypsis ninjas were chasing behind him, and the number of Sand Crypsis ninjas behind him increased. Looking back at the Sand Crypsis ninjas behind him, Hyojin secretly smiled. Hyojin's intention is very obvious. He wants to mobilize the other party's search personnel. He thought to himself, as long as they pass through this Gobi Desert and enter the canyon, they will be considered to have crossed into the territory of the Land of Rain. After escorting the convoy of Rorin survivors into the Land of Rain, Hyojin will no longer care about it. At this point, he has already done his best. As for how Sarah and the Rorin survivors live in the Land of Rain, he has neither the ability nor the interest to intervene. At this time, the 3 generations Kazakage puppets in charge of the investigation came back and reported, "The people of the Sand Crypsis have caught up again." Hyojin looked back and glanced coldly. His previous plan to disrupt the entire search operation of the Sand Crypsis was successful, but as time passed, the higher-ups of the Sand Crypsis who collected enough information soon realized that the convoy of Rorin survivors wanted to escape into the Land of Rain, so the pursuers of the Sand Crypsis also had a direction and rushed in this direction. Looking at the approaching Sand Crypsis ninjas, Hyojin said calmly, "Since you are in a hurry to die, then I have to fulfill your wish." Therefore, in their opinion, the thin layer of black shield in front of Hyojin would definitely not be able to block their combined ninjutsu. Whoosh! The strong wind blew away the smoke and dust, and Hyojin's figure was revealed. The thin layer of black shield in front of him was not damaged in the slightest, and even its shape did not change at all. The powerful combination ninjutsu just now was like a firework to attract attention. How was this possible? The Jonin of the Sand Crypsis who used fire release was shocked. Although his intuition told him that the truth-seeking ball was unusual, he did not expect that his fire release ninjutsu would not be able to cause any damage to it. The other Jonin of the Sand Crypsis team quickly shouted, "Nobu, there's something strange about those black balls." The Jonin of the Sand Crypsis named Nobu, who had just used fire release, suppressed the shock in his heart, restored the calmness of a Jonin, and said, "Zisuk, this guy is not simple. Let's work together." The other Jonin of the Sand Crypsis named Nobu nodded, then bit the tip of his finger and gently pressed on the sand, spirit summoning technique. Bang! Chapter 102. Hyojin looked down. In his vision of the Tenseigan, there was a very large sandworm hidden in the sand dune. And this sandworm is not only huge, but it also has a very good chakras amount. Among the ninja beasts that Hyojin has seen, it is absolutely outstanding. After a light sound, Hyojin did not do anything extra. Since he used the Tenseigan chakra mode, he did not intend to let these Sand Crypsis ninjas go, but this does not prevent him from using these Sand Crypsis ninjas as practice. Especially in the use of the truth-seeking ball, he still needs to familiarize himself with it. After all, counting from the time he mastered the Tenseigan chakra mode, there are only a few opportunities for him to really touch the truth-seeking ball, and it was either because he was in a crisis and didn't have the time to carefully comprehend it, or because his chakra wasn't enough to fully activate it. Like now, it is the first time that he has both chakra and time, so he doesn't want to waste it easily. Otherwise, when he returns to the village, it will not be easy to find such an opportunity again. On the side of the Sand Crypsis ninjas, Aura glanced at several companions around him, then looked at Nosuk and nodded. After exchanging a few glances, the 8 sand ninjas communicated with each other about the next step of their strategy. Wind release, tornado. The 2 sand Crypsis Chunin took the lead to attack, one on the left and one on the right. At the same time, they used the wind release ninjutsu, and the giant sandworm hidden under the sand dune also spat out a sand column at the right time. The 2 wind release ninjutsu rolled up the yellow sand in the sand column, and in an instant, the surroundings were stirred up as if suddenly fell into the night. When Hyojin saw this, he smiled slightly. You want to deprive me of my vision through the sandstorm? At this time, Sand Crypsis Jonin Aura took out 2 scrolls from the ninja bag, one in each hand, and shook both scrolls at the same time. Bang! After a burst of smoke, 2 puppets appeared in front of him. One of the puppets looked very similar to a python. It was made up of joints, and each joint seemed to be able to move. It looked very strange. As for the other puppet, it was like a huge umbrella. When it was opened, it had a diameter of more than 2 meters. The sandstorm doesn't hinder Hyojin's Tenseigan. With a glance, he discovered that the joints of the python puppet were filled with layers of detonation runes, and the belly of the umbrella-shaped puppet was densely packed with thousands of books. Moreover, he didn't need to guess to know that these thousands of books must have been soaked in poison. After summoning the 2 puppets, Depu's expression turned ferocious as he shouted, "Bastards! How dare you look down on us? Die!" Oshiro's anger was like a horn to attack. The first was the python puppet. It suddenly leapt up, and the mechanism under its abdomen spewed out a wave of air. The entire puppet shot out like an arrow towards Hyojin, who was in midair. At the same time, the umbrella-shaped puppet launched countless thousands of books towards Hyojin. Hyojin waved his hands indifferently, and the 5 truth-seeking balls floating around him instantly turned into a black ball, protecting him from all directions. Clang, clang, clang. Countless thousands of books hit the wall of the black ball formed by the truth-seeking balls, making a burst of metal impact sound. However, the wall of the black ball still didn't change at all, and the thousands of books forged from fine steel seemed to have suddenly become wooden, easily broken and broken. At this time, the python puppet that flew over wrapped around the black ball, and then the sound of detonation runes sounded. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions shook the surrounding sand, and the huge shock wave forced all the ninjas of the Sand Crypsis to cover their cheeks and fly back. Depu gritted his teeth and said, "There are 10,000 detonation runes hidden in my exploding python. He is dead." Another Jonin of the Sand Crypsis, Nosuk, sensed it and suddenly exclaimed, "Something's wrong." "What's wrong?" The group of Sand Crypsis ninjas all looked at Nosuk. Nosuk shook his head and said, "The sandworm told me that the chakra reaction has not disappeared. How is that possible? Who can survive such an explosion? Even Lord Kazakage can't block this attack," and scathed. The Chunin ninjas of Sand Village were all talking at the same time. Depu frowned and asked, "Nosuk, could it be that the sandworm made a mistake?" Looking at the sky, full of smoke and dust not far away, Nosuk's expression became more and more serious. He said in a deep voice, "There is no mistake. The sandworm told me that it is very afraid." Depu was stunned when he heard that. That devil incarnate knows fear? In the desert, the giant sandworm has almost no natural enemies. Any bird or beast is within their hunting range. So we heard that the giant sandworm is afraid. He felt ridiculous. The smoke and dust of the explosion gradually dissipated, and Hyojin's figure appeared again. Seeing that Hyojin is still unscathed, the group of Sand Crypsis ninjas looked at each other. In their minds, such a monster should not exist in this world. Hyojin ignored the group of Sand Crypsis ninjas and silently felt the changes of the truth-seeking ball just now. Being hit by 10,000 detonation runes is not a good feeling. If it was someone else, even if it was the Kage of the major shinobi villages, they would be seriously injured if not dead. However, for Hyojin, who has the truth-seeking ball, it is not a big problem. It just consumed a lot of his chakra reserves in an instant. After a moment, Hyojin asked coldly, "Is this all you can do?" Having consumed a lot of chakra, he put away the thought of continuing to practice. After all, this is the Wind Nation, and a ninja should be cautious. Sandcrypsis ninja Depu wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and said, "This monster is not something we can deal with. Retreat." With Depu's order, the already timid Sandcrypsis ninjas immediately scattered in all directions. Hyojin smiled, then raised his right hand and gently clenched it into a fist. In an instant, the 8 fleeing Sandcrypsis ninjas were involuntarily pulled back to where they were. Even the battle-hardened Jonin Nobu of the Sand Village couldn't help but tremble at this moment. "Just now, you seem to call me a bastard." After a pause, Hyojin said lightly, "Then I will turn you into a real bastard." After saying that, Hyojin pointed at Depu. A truth-seeking ball flew out and shot at Depu. Seeing this, Depu quickly took out 2 kunai and tried to block the truth-seeking ball. Bang! Chapter 103. Noboru. Seeing that his companion was crushed by the truth-seeking ball, Nosuke of the Sandcrypsis was filled with grief and indignation. The other Chunin of the Sandcrypsis were also frightened. They seemed to have lost their will to fight, and their eyes were filled with fear as they looked at the truth-seeking ball. It was really hard for them to imagine that such a seemingly ordinary black ball could have such power. Hyojin waved his hand slowly and took back the truth-seeking ball. The expression on his face was still calm. Using kunai to block the truth-seeking ball, this kind of behavior is originally courting death, so the death of the Sandcrypsis Jonin was not surprising to Hyojin at all. It was completely reasonable. However, there was a problem with this attack. A completely frightened Sandcrypsis Jonin, after Hyojin used the truth-seeking ball to attack, actually had the time to take out the kunai and make a complete blocking action. What does this mean? This means that the attack speed of the truth-seeking ball is not fast. At least, it is far from what Hyojin expected. The truth-seeking ball is invincible, and it doesn't have the characteristic of being untouchable by the power of the Sixth Path, which indeed makes it extremely powerful. But if it can't accurately hit the target, then its power is meaningless. After all, there are many powerful techniques in the shinobi world. For example, the 3 generations Tsuchikage Dust Release, Mai's Corpse Demon Seal, Manjikyu Sharingan's Amaterasu, and so on. Once hit, the target will either die or be severely injured. The weaker techniques, such as Sasori's Poison, Kakashi's Rachel, and so on, are also powerful techniques that can end the battle as long as they hit the target. It should be because I don't have enough control. Hyojin feels that the speed of the truth-seeking ball should be able to be improved, and the reason why the attack speed of the truth-seeking ball is relatively slow may be related to his ability to control the truth-seeking ball. At this time, the only remaining Sandcrypsis Jonin, Nosuke, shouted to the 6 Sandcrypsis Chunin around him, "I will hold him. You guys split up and run. Be sure to report the situation back to the village." The 6 Sandcrypsis Chunin were already scared out of their wits, and they knew that they wouldn't be of much help even if they stayed, so they fled in all directions. Hyojin had already consumed a lot of chakra at this time, so he didn't want to continue to entangle with them. He directly flew towards the fleeing Chunin of the Sandcrypsis in the Tenseigan chakra mode and used the long black sword transformed by the truth-seeking ball to kill one by one. In just a moment, the 6 fleeing Chunin of the Sandcrypsis were killed one by one. Seeing this, Jonin Nosuke of the Sandcrypsis shouted, "I'll kill you." After that, he gathered all the chakra in his body and quickly formed a seal with his hands. Hyojin frowned and was just about to step forward and get rid of this Sandcrypsis Jonin. Bang! Suddenly, with a muffled sound, a huge wave of sand spewed out from the ground, blocking Hyojin's way. Then, The giant sandworm hiding under the sand dune also revealed half of its body, and a big mouth full of sharp mouthparts aimed at Hyegen, who was in midair. At this time, Jonan Nosuk of the Sand Crypsis had already completed a very complicated seal and shouted, "Secret technique, sand soil glue." As he shouted, he spat out a very sticky clay from his mouth, and at the same time, the giant sandworm also spat out a large amount of sticky liquid from its mouth. These two gelatinous substances merged together in midair, turning into a huge net that covered the sky and the earth, accompanied by the whistling sound of the wind, covering Hyegen in midair. Hyegen didn't know whether the sticky thing was poisonous or corrosive, so he immediately activated the 5 truth-seeking balls and turned them into a black ball, protecting him inside. After the sticky net covered Hyegen's truth-seeking ball, it quickly hardened, like cement, layer by layer pasted on the truth-seeking ball. In the truth-seeking ball, Hyegen's eyes were stunned, because in the vision of his Tenseigan, Jonan Nosuk of the Sand Crypsis actually took advantage of the gap when he was defending the sticky net and hid in the stomach of the sandworm, and then directly dived into the sand dune, trying to escape by sneaking underground. There is no doubt that Nosuk had long planned to escape through the sandworm. The so-called plan to let other Sand Crypsis companions pass the message was just to let others act as bait to contain Hyegen and then find a chance to escape. He just didn't expect that Hyegen in the Tenseigan chakra mode was too fast. Killing 6 Jonan of the Sand Crypsis didn't take much time at all, so he had to use the secret technique to try to escape. "Umph!" Hyegen snorted disdainfully. Immediately, he waved his hand, and the truth-seeking ball shattered the solidified sticky net in an instant and easily got rid of the secret technique of Nosuk of the Sand Crypsis. Then, he quickly flew over the sandworm that was sneaking in the sand dune. The giant sandworm was sneaking more than 10 meters under the sand dune, and its speed was not slow. If it was an ordinary person, let alone intercepting it, it's unknown whether they could even find it or not. But for Hyegen in the Tenseigan chakra mode, it was not difficult. After a little hesitation, Hyegen made up his mind, so he stretched out his right hand slightly, made a gesture of holding a sword, and shouted coldly, "Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion." In an instant, 5 truth-seeking balls gathered in his right hand, spinning rapidly, and finally gathered into a golden sword that was as dazzling as the sun. What a powerful force! Chapter 104. Seeing the companion in front of him suddenly stop, the Sand Crypsis ninja behind him quickly asked, "Hey, what's wrong with you? Why did you stop?" The Sand Crypsis ninja, who stopped suddenly, pointed to the sky. "Look what's going on with that golden light." Everyone looked over and saw a dazzling golden light flickering in the distant horizon. The brilliance of the light was not much inferior to the sun hanging high in the sky. "It looks like a golden light. No, isn't the sun above our heads? Is it a mirage?" Several Sand Crypsis ninjas discussed. At this time, a Sand Crypsis ninja seemed to think of something and asked, "That direction, it should be Ohura Kazunisuk and the others, right?" Another Sand Crypsis ninja's face sank. "Ohura Kazunisuk can't make such a big scene." The Sand Crypsis village made a big move this time, not only to hunt down the convoy of the Roar survivors, but also the mysterious person who stole the Dragon Vein. The Dragon Vein was sealed by Yondaime Naruto, but the mysterious person not only broke the seal of Yondaime Naruto, but also stole the Dragon Vein in a very short time. It can be seen that the mysterious person's strength is not to be underestimated. Therefore, the strange scene in the distance made the Sand Crypsis ninjas present realize that the situation is not good, because this level of strange scene is not something that an ordinary ninja can make. If there is someone who can make it, then it can only be the mysterious person who stole the Dragon Vein. Therefore, the Sand Crypsis ninjas did not dare to delay, and quickly rushed towards the place where the golden light shone. On Hyegen's side, damn, the consumption of Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion is so big. The Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion just now almost exhausted all the Tenseigan chakra in Hyegen's body. At this time, He can barely maintain the Tenseigan chakra mode. But once he exits the Tenseigan chakra mode, there is nothing he can do about the sand crypsis jonin hidden more than 10 meters under the sand dune. After all, at this depth, whether it is taijutsu, ninja tools, or detonation talismans, none of them can play the slightest role. Therefore, Hyojin could only grit his teeth and activate the dragon bloodline chakra without converting it. He forcefully activated the golden wheel reincarnation explosion and slashed at the weak chakra reaction under the sand dune. In any case, those who have seen him activate the Tenseigan chakra mode must be completely silenced. Otherwise, his information will be leaked and the consequences will be unimaginable. Swish! The golden wheel reincarnation explosion slashed down again, easily cutting through the sand dune layer of more than 10 meters, obliterating the entire sand crypsis jonin hidden deep inside. Phew! After confirming that the sand crypsis jonin is dead, Hyojin let out a sigh of relief. Chapter 105. Pressing 2 fingers on his right eye. At this time, Yondaime Kazakage's face, like the surrounding environment, was gray with an indescribable gloom. At this time, the Sand Crypsis consultant Chiyo walked over and asked, "Did you find any clues?" The 4 generations of Kazakage shook his head. He controlled the eye of the sand and scanned the surrounding desert for dozens of miles, but didn't find any useful clues. In this regard, Chiyo wasn't too surprised because the desert is like this. With the passage of time, the wind and sand will naturally cover everything. Even if the mysterious person really left any traces, it will gradually disappear in the wind and become difficult to find. After removing the eye of the sand, the 4 generations of Kazakage walked to the edge of the crack with a gloomy face. This crack is the one left by Hyojin when he killed the giant sandworm with the golden wheel reincarnation explosion. Because a lot of the giant sandworm's blood and colloidal body fluid splashed out, the edge solidified, so the trace of the crack is still very clear, temporarily not covered by the wind and sand. Squatting down next to the crack, the 4 generations of Kazakage stretched out their hands and gently pressed on the sand, closed their eyes, and sensed for a moment, then said, "The sandworm died here. It's completely dead." Another sand village advisor on the side, Mikuro, frowned. Even if sandworm is cut in half at the waist, it doesn't necessarily mean that he will die, right? Sandworms are a very special kind of ninja beast. Their self-healing ability is extremely strong. Even if a small part of their body is gone, there's a certain probability that they can survive. Not to mention that the sandworm that is hidden in the sand dunes is almost invincible. Even with Hai's rich experience, it is hard to imagine what kind of attack can kill a giant sandworm that is hiding deep underground and has extremely strong vitality. Chiyo asked the 4 generations of Kazakage with uncertainty. "In the village, I'm afraid only you can do this, right?" The 4 generations of Kazakage pondered for a moment and shook his head. The sandworm died more than 10 meters underground. At this depth, I only have the confidence to trap it. Killing it would be very difficult. Upon hearing that, the 2 Sand Crypsis consultants went silent at the same time. With just a few words, they had more or less figured out the mysterious man's strength. After a while, Hai Laozong asked, "Who could it be?" In the eyes of the upper echelons of the Sand Crypsis, the strength of this mysterious person who stole the dragon vein has definitely reached the level of Kage, and it is impossible for him to be unknown in the shinobi world. Chiyo still insisted on his previous judgment, to be able to unlock 4 generations Naruto's dragon vein seal. That person can only be Mai's people. At this time, a member of the Umbu tribe of the Sand Crypsis arrived in front of them and reported, "Kazakage-sama, 2 consultants, we followed the tracks all the way and found that the convoy of Rorin survivors has entered the land of rain." The eyes of the 4 generations of Kazakage suddenly sharpened, and he muttered to himself, "Could it be the legendary demigod, Hanzo the pepper fish of the Rain Village?" Hai Laozong said, "If it's him, then things will be troublesome. Under Pain's closed policy, all information transmission to the outside of the Land of Rain has been cut off, which makes everyone in the shinobi world believe that the leader of the Rain Village is still Hanzo, the pepper fish. In the original story, the news of Hanzo's death has been covered up by the Akatsuki organization, until more than 10 years later, when Jiraiya personally sneaked into the Land of Rain to inquire about the Akatsuki organization, he was surprised to find that Hanzo the pepper fish has long been killed by Pain. At this time, the Sand Crypsis Umbu asked, "Kazekage-sama, do you need us to sneak into the Land of Rain to capture those Rorin survivors?" The 4 generations of Kazekage shook their heads. Even the Sand Crypsis, one of the 5 great shinobi villages, doesn't dare to underestimate Hanzo the pepper fish, who is known as the demigod. After weighing the pros and cons, the 4 generations of Kazekage said to the 2 consulting elders beside him, "Report the news of the dragon vein being stolen to Mai, and see his reaction." The 2 consulting elders nodded at the same time. In the absence of confirming who the person who stole the dragon vein is, the only thing the Sand Crypsis can do is to inquire about the information from all over the place. On Hyojin's side, sitting cross-legged on the back of the Kazekage puppet of the 3 generations, Kuroto rushed towards the village while summarizing the gains and losses of the previous battle. The defensive power of the True Seeking Ball is very strong, but when attacked fiercely, the consumption of the chakra will also increase sharply, so I can't develop the habit of completely relying on the True Seeking Ball for defense. The attack speed is also a bit slow. If it's a sneak attack, it's fine, but if it's a frontal attack, the enemy can easily avoid it. The efficiency is too low. It's too difficult to maintain 5 True Seeking Balls. 3 is just right. Anyway, whether it's the Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion or the Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion, at this stage, it's not necessary to invest too many truth-seeking balls. After summarizing these experiences, Hyojin glanced at his right arm again. There is no doubt that after becoming the Jinchuriki of the Dragon Vein, chakra became rich, his mentality became a little arrogant, his emotions were affected by the sudden power, he didn't pay enough attention to the enemy, and made a mistake in the last blow.